in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Sunday morning. I'm here right through till 1 o'clock today, and indeed tomorrow I'm identifying as Julia Hartley-Brewer, and I'm going to be here between 10 and 1, so I hope you can join me for that as well. Starmer to curb judges' powers in asylum cases. Protests yesterday, about 15 or 16 arrests, but about 30 protests right across the country. People saying they're standing up for their rights, wanting migrant hotels to close. Of course, that's a big controversy that continues. We'll get into that with the Shadow Home Office Minister, Matt Vickers. We'll also be on our debate desk with Marnie Morris, who's an expert in these things, and Reem Abraham is here too. We'll talk to the former government advisor on political violence a little bit later on to work out just where this country is going. Nigel Farage says we're close to the edge. What do you think of that as well? Let's hope we're not. Let's hope that's wrong. GCSEs and A levels, of course, results have been out over the last 10 days or so. We had a really popular guest previously, Dr. Tej Samani. He is the founder of Performance Learning, a sort of super coach for kids to get them, well, young people, not kids, young people, to get them better results. If you're someone who is wondering what to do next, or you're someone who maybe has kids or grandchildren who are wondering what to do next, Tej is your man. He will give you the skills, the ideas, the challenges, and indeed the strategies to go to the next level. So he will be here at 11:30. Feel free to give him a ring and we can talk to him. We'll talk as well to Jonathan Harunoff, who is Israel's international spokesman to the United Nations. He has a fascinating new book out now about Iran, where that goes, what it means for the UK, of course, as well. All those protests over the past few years. We'll ask him whether there is a famine in Gaza. That's something Israel denies. We'll talk about all those issues, and I want your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Love your voice notes, love getting them. Please keep them to less than a minute so we get as many of them on as possible between now and 1 o'clock. Whatever you want to say, you can send me a voice note, you can give me a ring, you can talk live on air. Let's have a chat. 0344 499 1000. We're going to the debate desk. Reem Abraham is apparently 2 tube stops away. We'll keep you updated on exactly how close. Oh, she's entering the building. This is very exciting. But Marley Morris was on time this morning and is here. He's Associate Director of Migration, Trade and Communities at the IPPR think tank, the Institute of Public Policy Research. Marley, good morning.
Good morning.
Reem will be here very shortly. She's just in the building, so we will get to her. She's the head of media at the Institute of Economic Affairs. But Marley, you're an expert on all issues to do with migration. We've got this new big story today. Keir Starmer overhauling the asylum appeal system in an effort to deport failed asylum seekers faster, stopping the hotel crisis, which is obviously derailing his immigration strategy. You're dealing with about something like 51,000 people who are waiting for a decision, about 30,000 of them, 32,000 I think, in hotels. They're waiting over a year for a decision. Processing is a huge issue. We've seen so many different protests in towns and cities, including Bristol, Liverpool, Newcastle, Wakefield and Aberdeen. There were 15 arrests yesterday. That's a small number, but of course we don't want anybody to break the law. Marley, do you think this change, well, first of all, maybe you would explain to us what this change is, what Starmer is actually proposing, and then tell us whether you think it will work.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's really important to say that this is actually a really important part of the system because the government's done quite well in bringing down the initial decision backlog, so making those initial decisions much more quickly in the last year. And that backlog's starting to go down. But what you're seeing is actually, as people get refused, they get stuck in an appeals backlog, and they're getting stuck in there for long periods, as you say. It's I think, an average of around 53 weeks.
So what happens is that an asylum seeker attempts to claim asylum, they say, no, you're not here, you shouldn't be claiming asylum, you should go home. Then it goes to an appeal, and this is changing that appeals bit of the system.
Exactly. I think bringing in a new body so that can speed up the process rather than waiting on the judicial system, which is very slow at the moment. And
so
it's just
judges, of course, as we know, are overwhelmed, as you say. There are loads of different cases, and actually this is not judges. This is other people who are appealing this system.
Well, I think we haven't got the full details exactly how this will work, but I think the idea is to bring in some additional new body which will help to deal with these
and do it faster.
And do it a lot
Surely
faster.
The temptation will be simply to say that these people are here and they should be given asylum. I mean, are you confident that they will deal with it properly?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably, we haven't seen the details, but it seems like a reasonable approach to take, to think about how to reform the system. Need to ensure that we've got a fair process, that those claims are being determined fairly. So that's going to be an important question for the government, to make sure that any system that's introduced handles those claims in a fair and impartial manner. I think it's also important to look at actually those initial decisions, so we make sure that we get those decisions right the first time. We see, for instance, that the appeal success rate at the moment is about 50%. So actually a lot of those appeals are successful, refusals are being overturned, and actually if we make those decisions more accurately, that'll just speed up the process altogether. In terms of those refusals, surely there is almost an incentive if you're saying 50% of them are being overturned. Well, that, as you intimate there, well, the original decision is wrong half the time. So presumably, if you're an asylum seeker, you get a no. Well, there's no disincentive to appeal, is there? Well, I think most people generally do appeal, and I think it very much depends on the individual case whether you'll be successful or not, and also, of course, it depends on whether you've got legal advice. So often people don't necessarily have strong legal advice, and that can make it very difficult for people. So it really depends on the precise circumstances. But I think it's important for people to have a right to appeal, because we know a lot of the initial decisions can be mistaken. We just need to do it in a fair way and in a fast way, because actually what's happening is that a lot of the people in hotels are now actually people who are stuck in this appeals backlog. That's costing huge amounts of money, and we need to bring those costs down, and this is one way of doing that, as long as it's done in a fair way. Another way to reform the system is what Nigel Farage has pointed out yesterday. We talked about this at length on the programme. He has announced his plan for mass deportations, vowing to deliver 5 removal flights a day if made
Prime Minister, he's also talked about the fact that he wants to withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. What do you make of that?
Well, the problem, I think, with those proposals is that they're very similar to what the last Conservative government put in place, the Illegal Migration Act, which said that the Home Secretary had a duty to remove everyone who arrived irregularly. And we know from that experience it did not work effectively. And there were lots of practical problems with returning people. There were diplomatic challenges with finding countries that would agree to return people. Rwanda, of course, agreed, but not at the scale that would have made this system work. So actually,
but would there have been a deterrent within that? If you say you might go to Rwanda, okay, a very small chance within the system had it actually quite literally got off the ground, but nonetheless maybe some sort of deterrent.
Well, I think you need to do it at scale for there to be an effective deterrent. You need to do it initially to demonstrate. I mean, often people, for instance, in Calais, aren't aware of the ins and outs of the precise asylum policy in the UK. So you'd have to actually really demonstrate it worked. And I don't think there was any credible evidence that this would have worked at scale. I think that Farage will face similar problems. Actually, the government's currently got this one-in, one-out scheme with France. Of course, it's early days, but that I think is more likely to work because France is a.
Will it actually work, though, in terms of the French idea? Because there are so many people arriving, and even if it's one in, one out, it's more like 20 in, one out, actually.
Well, you're right. Again, it has to work at scale, otherwise it's not going to be effective. But I think there's a greater chance of it working at scale in France than Rwanda. Rwanda didn't have an effective asylum system. France does. Again, I think Farage is proposing returns deals with Eritrea, with Afghanistan. This seems very unfeasible. These are regimes that don't respect human rights, that we don't have proper dealings with. The idea that we're going to do returns agreements with them seems very unfeasible. With France, we've got this deal. I don't see why we shouldn't be focusing on actually scaling that up rather than coming up with kind of fantasy proposals.
OK, thank you, Marley. The good news is Reem Abraham is in the building. We're going to break shortly and then we'll get her into the studio. Pete in Redcar says Starmer needs to put his ear to the ground and see and feel the underlying feelings of the country. Jane says everything the Prime Minister and the government are doing is a disaster. The UK is going backwards. They've failed the country. They should all resign and call a general election. Joanna in Salisbury as well says, hi Cardi P. Hi Joanna. It might be simplistic, but actually I don't understand all these union people protesting against the removal of migrants. Legal or illegal migrants keep wages down with cheap labour. Their friends and families are being affected by a lack of services. For example, the NHS and housing, their taxes are going up to pay for these migrants and all the freebies given out. And just because they're union members, they and their families are equally at risk from sexual assaults, drug problems and theft as the people they are protesting against. Well, if you were perhaps on one of the protests yesterday, do give me a ring. I'd love to hear what happened there right around the country. I know the vast majority of them were totally peaceful. There were about 15 arrests. They happened all over the place: Bristol, Liverpool, Newcastle, Wakefield, Aberdeen and elsewhere. There are up to 30 of them. Let me know your thoughts on them as well. 0344 499 1000. We'll go back to the debate desk, hear more from Marley and from Reem in just a second here on Talk.
The minute you say anything that it should be changed or it should be looked at, you're called racist. But we've got to the point, some of us, haven't we, where we think, blow it, I don't care, call me what you like. The truth is, in the next 5 years, Notting Hill Carnival will cost the taxpayers between 80 and 100 million pounds. Which, how can we afford that when we're reducing policing in our city at a time when we should be increasing policing in our city?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now then, were you on a protest yesterday, perhaps outside a migrant hotel? I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Another person I'm delighted to hear from is Reem Ibrahim, who is with us here in the studio alongside Marley Morris. Reem is Head of Media at the Institute of Economic Affairs, recently promoted. Congratulations. And Marley Morris is Associate Director of Migration, Trade and Communities at the Institute for Public Policy Research. Reem, we've heard this idea from Keir Starmer. He wants to overhaul the asylum system. He wants to take away some of the reasons some of those people are protesting. Will it work?
I hope it does. I don't necessarily have all of the optimism that I think Keir Starmer has, and perhaps some of his supporters, but I do think that what we need to look at is ensuring that people feel as though you come to this country legally, you're able to work, you're able to contribute, and that isn't currently the case with the asylum claims. I mean, what is the backlog now? Like 200,000 people?
It's not as many as that. It's about, well, the backlog, certainly in appeals anyway, is 52,000, isn't it? 51,000.
And the initial backlog was about 90,000 people.
Is that right? So it has actually
down.
come down.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
It was about 150,000 last summer, I think. So it has actually been, that's great. It's a cut down. I think what's important is that it is being reduced, but also the fact that people feel as though you come to this country and you're able to work and contribute, and not the case where you're in asylum hotels where you are being taxpayer funded. And I actually think this is the problem with migration. I'm still very pro-immigration, and I think that immigration is fantastic when you are contributing, when you are working yourself. The problem is the current system incentivises the complete opposite. And I think that British people are very, very correct to be angry about the current system in which you have a lot of people coming over that are being entirely dependent on the state, i.e. taxpayers. And so it definitely is a reason to be angry, and I completely understand why people have been protesting.
So what is a reasonable... Sorry, Marley, go ahead.
You might agree with me on this. One of the challenges at the moment is that asylum seekers, when they arrive, they are not allowed to work. And so they are put in accommodation, and hotel accommodation is particularly expensive. It's about 6 times the cost of other forms of asylum accommodation. So, do you think that asylum seekers should have the right to work?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I do. And the reason for all that is, well, I believe in like a free labour market. So I think if people want to be able...
What if they're taking jobs away from people who are here already and have contributed to the system and are here legally?
They're not taking jobs away from anybody. I mean, fundamentally, if a business wants to hire somebody, they should be allowed to. And I don't believe that...
But they're making the market more competitive.
That's not necessarily how the labour market works. If we've got a growing economy, then there will be vacancies for everybody.
Very small growth.
Yeah, we have no growth at the moment. That's basically the problem. I mean, 21% of the working age population are economically inactive. Brits, 1/5 of Brits don't want to work. So I think the real question is...
Some of them can't work.
Some of them can't work. A lot of them are incentivised by the system to not work. I mean, when you're on personal independence payments, PIP, and incapacity benefits, you are on more than minimum wage. So, it really does make sense that a lot of those people don't want to work. I would reduce those benefits. But also, just to bring us back to migration, the problem is that if you are coming to this country as an asylum seeker, very likely at the moment I think you're an economic migrant, which I have no problem with, but we should be treating them as economic migrants. We should be ensuring that they are allowed to work and contribute. And fundamentally, if a British business wants to hire a migrant, they should be allowed to without the government telling them they can't.
I think it's an important point. Not all people coming are economic migrants. So we do have around a grant rate of around 50% people coming from Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan, where there's major conflict and persecution. So there are lots of people coming who genuinely have a well-founded asylum.
But when thousands of people from Albania are coming, you're like, it's...
Well, that's been sorted to some degree. I wonder what you think of Nigel Farage's plan, where he is saying that people who arrive here illegally should all be deported. Reem, that was the big story yesterday. What do you make of it?
I think that if you come here, basically I think it should be easy to come here legally, but if you do...
What would you do? How would you change the system?
I would ensure that if you are... Well, I would make it much easier, so I would have like work visas, so it would be significantly easier for somebody to come and get a job.
What about all the different pressures that you're going to get lots of messages, I'm sure, about pressures on housing, on infrastructure, GPs, school places, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're essentially saying if you can work and if you want to work, come here. What would you say to the pressure on the system already?
Yeah, so I think that we should have keyhole solutions to these problems. So I think if you're a migrant, you shouldn't be entitled to benefits. You shouldn't be entitled to free NHS, which isn't the case for legal migrants. They have to pay an NHS surcharge. You shouldn't be entitled to free education. You shouldn't be a net drain on the British taxpayer. And I think that if all of those solutions occurred, so if the welfare state wasn't entitled, well, if you weren't entitled to welfare state, if you weren't entitled to things like free healthcare, like on the NHS, we say it's free, but it's paid for by taxpayers, of course. If you weren't entitled to any of those things, I think people would be much less hostile to migration.
It's important to say that most migrants who arrive do have no recourse to public funds for the first 5 years of their arrival. That's potentially being extended further.
But the problem is that asylum seekers at the moment are obviously in taxpayer-funded hotel rooms, and they're being given not very much money at all, which is why a lot of them work on the black market and doing Deliveroo and that kind of thing. But the problem is that those people aren't allowed to work. I would actually like the system to completely reform, and what I would like to see is for those particular individuals to be able to contribute and work themselves. And crucially, if you've come here illegally, so the current system I think is broken because it needs to be easier for those people to be able to work. But if you come here illegally, you should be deported. You have committed a crime by coming to the country illegally, and that's where I think Farage is absolutely right. The problem is you can't do any of those things unless you leave the ECHR, unless you abolish the Human Rights Act, unless you remove all of the legal constraints at the moment.
I think that's where I do disagree, because I think even putting aside the legal constraints, it's extremely difficult to remove people who have come here by small boat or other irregular means. Unless they don't have a legitimate asylum claim. But if they have a well-founded asylum claim, say they've fled persecution from Afghanistan, from Eritrea...
But they're often coming through France, which is a safe country.
They're coming through France, yes, and we've got this one-in, one-out deal. So
yeah, but that's not going to be a panacea. What about the fact that there are loads of people I know watching and listening at the moment who will say, we don't want asylum seekers, they could go somewhere else. We could take some of them, but there are far too many at the moment, and the fact is they're coming from France, which is a safe country.
Well, my point is fundamentally a practical one. You cannot return people to Afghanistan or to Eritrea if they have a well-founded risk of persecution, and you don't have deals with those countries.
But under Nigel Farage's plan, you can.
Well, not if you haven't got a deal.
Well, if you've been with, well, he says he'll form a deal with those countries. He says he'll negotiate, and he also says that he wants to withdraw from a lot of legal mechanisms that would allow him to do that.
I don't know how he's going to negotiate with the Taliban. I mean, I think that I do find that a little bit absurd, because I'm not necessarily convinced that that's going to be effective. But look, I mean, the British people are very right to be upset about the way migration has been handled in this country, because of the way it has been handled. I mean, you have thousands upon thousands of people coming over on small boats. You have people every single day that are entering the country illegally, overstaying their tourist visas. And what is happening is those people are a net drain on taxpayers. I think if we can reform the system so that literally, if British people are not paying for them, then I think that most people will be upset about it. But also, integration would be a lot easier. You know, you're not having loads and loads of migrants in one particular area, but you have those people that are working and contributing, and they are brushing shoulders with British people every single day, and they become assimilated within British culture. I think integration has become a problem in this country because the government have effectively centrally planned the labour market. They've created a magnet for people to come over, because, I mean, there are obviously cultural things like the English culture, but also the English language. That's why people leave safe countries like France to come over here and claim asylum. But also the huge welfare state. I mean, these people are entitled to huge amounts of taxpayer-funded benefits. Migration is extremely expensive, and I think if we got rid of that, it would be less of a problem.
It's also, I think, really important to say that people aren't having a good time in these hotels. For the most part,
some of them are. Some of them are having a great time. Some of them are.
Some of them have got massages that are paid for by the taxpayer.
I've spoken to many asylum seekers who have had quite
how is it miserable to live in a
time?
In what way is it traumatic to live in a hotel?
Well, serious safeguarding risks, being packed in, extremely poor food, no ability to cater yourself, monitoring in and out,
there are lots of people
no privacy in these rooms.
Okay, the fact is that a lot of people in this country can't afford to feed their families and can't afford to feed themselves, and what they see is is, okay, some of these hotels are 4 and 5 star, not all of them, but some of them are 4 and 5 star, and sometimes they see people with games rooms, they see people having all sorts of privileges, having the kind of food and the kind of surroundings that they can dream of, that they can, there are hotels down the road from people where they say, that's the place I go for my mum's birthday, and we splash out and we save up. There are people eating that food every single day who've contributed nothing to this country.
Well, I mean, so I agree that the hotels should be closed. They're extremely expensive. They don't work for the people in them. They don't work for communities. There are sensible alternatives. We have other forms of accommodation that we can use. We can invest in a greater amount of temporary accommodation. We've had that system for a long time, and that hasn't caused the kind of community tensions we've seen in the last 12 months or so. So there are options that are much cheaper, that are more effective, that will support integration as well, and that are better for people who are living in them. And if we allow right to work, then actually that means people can actually get on their own 2 feet. And I just want
to hear from our viewers and listeners a little bit. Debbie says, I think this is the first time I've agreed totally with Reem. Stop giving away our tax money to people. If you're not British, you shouldn't get a free ride. They wouldn't come then. Sarah says, how about make them work and take every single penny of their wages to cover the cost of everything they're getting, so they have nothing left, like all us taxpayers. Anne says, please tell Peter, please tell Reem if these illegals work, that will give them another nod to remain in the UK. And Trevor says, it's not about migrants working, it's about the massive backwards destructive cultural change we are facing. That's Trevor in Harrow. And one more, and I'll get you to react to all of this. Simon in Canterbury says, morning Cardi P. Morning Simon. Does your panellist not understand we don't want or need any more immigration? She is spouting some utter tosh, and like Starmer, she hasn't been listening to the majority of the British people, says Simon. What would you say to that, Reem?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think that fundamentally this is about what liberal migration looks like and how that can actually work. Whether we like it or not, some of these people are already in this country. Now, we can advocate for mass deportation. As Farage has. I don't necessarily think that is going to be workable and or desirable. So I recently interviewed somebody from the US where they are currently deporting huge numbers of illegal migrants, and he is saying this is going to have a detrimental effect economically on the US, because illegal migration in the US is kind of like the best of both worlds. They are not entitled to any single benefit at all whatsoever, because they are obviously illegal. However, they do often work and do often contribute to the exchequer, to the taxpayer, because what they are doing is they're often working off the books and they are paying taxes still. I think I saw a figure recently that was like illegal migration in the US. Illegal migrants in the US contribute like $91 billion to the US government. So they I think the US kind of had the best of both worlds. Now Trump is deporting lots of illegal migrants, and that means there are significantly less.
But the key point is illegal.
Jobs.
You're there illegally. I mean, surely the point is that the law should be enforced.
Yeah, and I do believe in the rule of law, and I think it should be easier for those people to come and work. And the problem is, and migration is one of those issues that I think Marley and I will probably agree a lot on, because I am a libertarian, but I think that fundamentally it is about whether or not British people are having to foot the bill for it. I don't think that British people should be required to foot the bill for migration. I think that what should happen is, if a business in the UK wants to hire somebody from abroad, they should be legally allowed to do so without barriers from the government.
Okay. It's worth saying that, on average, and it depends on the particular skill level of people coming, but on average, migration does have a positive fiscal impact on the UK, because people are young, people pay taxes, and they don't.
A lot of people don't pay taxes who are migrants to the UK. A lot of people bring their families. A lot of people who are, we hear these arguments time and time again, Marley, about the fact that the NHS is full of people who are here from abroad. Great, good for them. But the fact is
they bring their dependents.
They bring their dependents.
So I
and a
think
lot of
that
people see this.
I think if you want to come to the UK, you have to pay for yourself and for your dependents and for any services that you use, and then I have no problem with you coming here, and I think a business shouldn't be stopped from hiring you. However, if you cannot afford any of those things, you should not be in this country. And I think that if the incentive structure changed, and if those people were not given a taxpayer-funded hotel room and taxpayer-funded benefits as soon as they arrive in the UK, then I think that migration would be significantly less of an issue.
Well, I think we need to separate asylum with the broader immigration system, which is most people come
But you
through.
can't necessarily separate them, Marley, because a lot of people claiming asylum in the UK at the moment are also economic migrants.
Well, they are in the asylum system, and so they are treated differently. So, as in, many of them actually do have a genuine...
But not all of them. Many of them do, but many of them don't, right? You can't say that every single... Do you think that every single asylum claim in the UK is genuine asylum?
No.
Genuine people fleeing conflict?
No, I never said that.
Because I don't know what conflict's going on in France. don't know why they left a safe country.
No, there are many people who are fleeing conflict in their original country. They travel to Europe, and then, you know, for various different reasons, you mentioned a few, language, family, they come to the UK. Many people stay in France.
But the point within that, Marley, sorry, I'll let you continue your point in a second, but the point with that, Marley, is that these people's choice to come to this country, and that is an aspect of free movement that a lot of our viewers and listeners have a big problem with, where they say, why not just stay in France or the first country they come to?
Well, and with this one in, one out deal, some people will be returned to France. If, you know,
it's a very small number.
If we join the Dublin arrangement with the EU, then that could be expanded to the whole of
probably
Europe.
Not going to happen. And Dublin didn't help when we were in the EU to a huge degree. There were very few benefits of it.
I think if we were in Dublin now, I suspect the government, Conservative, Labour, whichever government, would be making very great use of it, because I think it was a mechanism.
What do we think of the I mean, Trevor texted in asking about the cultural arguments, which we haven't really touched on, and I think it is really interesting because I mean, I'm originally from North Africa. I do think that there are ways in which different cultural aspects are incompatible with British values, and I think that if you come to the UK...
What do you think is incompatible?
I think that there are some aspects of, well, I mean, the way that some aspects of that culture treat women, you know, and North Africa is extraordinarily more liberal in comparison to the majority of the cultures that we're importing at the moment. You know, when we have cultures that basically don't believe that women should be allowed to dress the way that I do, have their hair revealed, things like that, I think are particularly pernicious, and I am genuinely concerned about that. However, I do think that the culture is related to the economic, and that if you are somebody that, I touched on this earlier, but if you are somebody that comes to the UK as a work migrant, you know, if you're from Portugal and you're coming over for a job in London, you are every single day working with people that are from the UK. You are integrating within that culture, and it's significantly easier for you to integrate. The current system has basically resulted in the central planning of the labour market, where people are being imported from different cultures, and when you have huge amounts of those people and they're not meeting British people every single day, it's very difficult for them to integrate.
I'm going to go to a break in just a second, but final word from Marley before we do.
I think actually one way to support integration and to reassure communities is through a migration impact fund, which previous governments have set up, which actually would help to relieve pressure, provide additional funding for communities where there has been increased migration.
Waste of taxpayer money, I think.
And would support integration for people in those communities.
I like the idea in theory, however, taxpayer money should not be spent on migration.
Okay, lots to discuss. Let us know what you think of what Marley and Reem are saying. 0344 499 1000. We've got more from them, and indeed from the Shadow Home Office Minister Matt Vickers, coming up in just a few minutes here on Talk. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch. Jason in the Lake District says, make them work and take all their wages, put them in tented camps and feed them basics, stop the madness of the current system. Mark in Devon says, good morning, Peter. What's going on with Reem? I normally agree with most of what she says, but has her promotion softened her position? Illegal, I don't think it has. Illegal immigrants should not be able to work. They need to be deported on arrival. Come on, Reem, listen to the room. Again, great show as always, says Mark. I want to play a couple of voice notes and then we'll go back to the debate desk with Reem and Marley. Let's hear what Anna has to say about what Marley's been saying.
Morning, Peter. Anna, sorry. I've just had to pull over. I'm driving to work, listening to this man waffling. What is wrong with these politicians? You're so detached from the rest of us out here. My blood pressure rockets every time I turn Talk Radio on. There's a reason Nigel Farage is miles and miles and miles and miles in front of any other political party. It's because he gets it. Oh my word, Peter.
Well, thank you for that, Anna. Clearly, we've riled her up this morning. Marley, I'll let you respond to that in just a second, and hope you have a nice day at work, Anna. Matt's been in touch as well with a voice note.
Peter, Matt in Hove here. Let me just try and square this circle, because it's confusing me. This Labour government think that by speeding up the asylum process, that will deter migrants coming over. Have they lost their mind? All that'll mean is that they've got less time in a hotel for free, less time in an HMO for free, and when their claim is accepted, they can claim benefits and get housing benefit and get their own place. If you were going to devise something that isn't a deterrent, it would be that.
Thank you for that. Brad in Cambridge also says many people like me aren't interested in these schemes. They simply want illegal migration stopped and a temporary pause on all migration until this country's infrastructure is sorted out. That's Brad in Cambridge. And another person says, morning Pete, why is that woman talking up illegals? Surely she can see that we don't want unvetted men in our country. Okay, to respond to all of that, especially Anna's very impassioned message, Marley, what would you say to Anna?
Well, I mean, Anna clearly disagrees with me. I don't think she made a particular point that I can respond to, other than she
made a very good point, saying that Nigel Farage is miles in front of any other political party. Can you see why that is?
Well, okay. In response to that, I absolutely think that the proposal put forward by Farage this weekend is not going to work. It's very similar to the proposal put forward by the last Conservative government. It's going to be likely extremely impractical. You're not going to be able to do deals with Afghanistan, Eritrea, certainly not Sudan, which is in the middle of a civil war. So I think we're still lacking a real plan.
Reem?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, I think, because I completely understand why people are really, really angry about migration, and I think the cultural arguments are really important. And I think that there are huge aspects to this. The economy isn't growing. Taxes are extraordinarily high. We are paying the highest tax burden since the Second World War.
And Rachel Reeves is set to launch a stealth tax raid on workers. This is in the next budget. She looks to plug the 50 billion black hole in public finances, reportedly set to introduce a 6-year freeze on income tax thresholds rather than increasing them in line with the cost of living or inflation. What do you make of that?
Which is practically, what she's doing is she is raising taxes on working people, which is exactly what she said she wasn't going to do. But shock, a politician has lied to us. When you are freezing income tax thresholds, what happens is something called fiscal drag. With the effect of inflation, you are being dragged into higher tax brackets. So in effect, it is a tax rise. I can't imagine it will raise a huge amount of money for the Treasury. And fundamentally, the size of the state is far too big. Public spending as a proportion of GDP is about 44%. It is rising. If we think that this year is the last time we have tax rises, you are taking us for fools, because we are also going to have tax rises next year and the year after and the year after.
Do you know what? I spoke to a businessman who employs about 30 people in Scotland. Spoke to him yesterday, had a long chat. And he was telling me that he thinks that 2025 is the worst year he has ever had. He's just had to lay 7 people off. He says that national insurance rises. Essentially, he very reluctantly laid off 7 people. The 20 or so people he still has, the national insurance bill for them is about the same as it was previously when he had them. So they're going, he says there's no chance of him employing anybody else. He's been in the business he's in for about 25 plus years, and he says under Labour this is the worst year that he has had. Marley, I just wonder what you think of what Rachel Reeves is doing, the choices that she is facing, and whether you think Labour understands business.
So, look, I don't think that the Chancellor wants to raise this tax. I mean, she made that pretty clear last year at the budget, but there are limited options available.
Cut spending.
And cutting spending is frankly going to, we've already had a decade of austerity. So where
what austerity?
What spending
Public spending reduced by about 0.9% during so-called austerity.
What spending can we cut? Healthcare? I mean, there's strong support for healthcare spending. I mean, our NHS is only just getting back on its feet.
£200 billion
coming
a year.
down. Defence, we're currently facing huge security threats.
I'll tell you what I'd cut.
It would be extremely irresponsible to
let me
cut
answer your question.
spending on defence.
I'd abolish the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. Afuera style. You know, Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, he said the word afuera, which means, you know, he's cutting all of these government departments.
The one with
the chainsaw man, yes. Yeah. I think we need...
How much would that raise?
We have absolutely no idea, but we need to ensure that we are cutting public spending significantly. I basically think that what's quite shocking is that public spending as a proportion of GDP is at 44%. That means basically almost half of the economy is the government. That is absurd. We absolutely should be cutting spending. And when you're looking at what the government actually spends money on, a lot of it is pensions, a lot of it is healthcare. So I would get rid of the NHS. I think we need a competitive...
You get rid of the NHS?
Yes, I think we need a competitive market system.
What about pensions that people have paid into? You can't get rid of that, can you?
I would means test a state pension. 25% of pensioners are millionaires. I know I said this on talkTV on Friday and I got so much hate, but I'm going to say again, I think we need to means test a state pension because 25% of pensioners are millionaires. They absolutely can afford to live themselves without being on state support.
What if they paid into it? They paid in the same way. Yes, of course you can, Marty.
One of the key problems with means testing the state pension, which the IFS has pointed out, is that it would disincentivise saving for your own private pension. So how would you deal with that?
How would that disincentivise saving for your private pension?
Because if you got to the point of reaching the state pension age, then you'll be more likely to receive the state pension if you've got less savings.
That doesn't make sense because surely if you're not entitled to a state pension, you're more likely to want to save for your retirement.
No, because the point is that everyone at the moment gets a state pension. So if you reduce
Australia have means tested their state pension, and basically everybody understands that national insurance contributions are a complete scam, right?
No.
People think that you pay
hold on, one at a time.
People think that you pay NI your entire life, and it goes into a little pot, and then when you reach pension age, you take that money out, and that's a complete lie. The money has already been spent. If you've paid national insurance your entire life, that money has already been spent. Now, for pensioners today, I absolutely think their pensions should be protected because it's unfair to just throw this on people. But in the future, we absolutely have to have a conversation about whether or not the state pension is sustainable, and I don't think it is.
If you means test a state pension, then you are more likely to get the state pension if you're earning less and if you're saving less. And so it encourages people
But the state pension itself is not...
to save less. So you're encouraging people to earn less and save less. You're actually damaging the economy by means testing the state pension.
I would love to see that research, but I basically think that's a complete lie. I mean, how is it the case that if you say you're not going to get these benefits, that stops people from saving? I don't think that's true at all.
You're not getting the benefits only at a certain level of income or savings.
Yeah, but the state pension is basically nothing. I mean, it's like £150 a week.
Look,
I don't think that there is...
A lot of people are living on that, Reem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the state pension right now is not very generous at all.
Well, if you means test it, a lot of people are going to get even less than that.
Yeah, but people that already have private pensions, right? I'm saying the people that are getting only £150 a week and that's all they have, they don't have a private pension, those people should actually be getting more money, right? Okay. But the problem is, if you're somebody like Lord Alan Sugar and you are a multi-millionaire, you shouldn't be getting taxpayer-funded benefits.
Let's hear what Marty has to say.
The government tried to means test winter fuel payment. That faced a huge public backlash. The idea that you could get away with means testing the state pension is just not politically viable. There was actually support for increasing spending and increasing taxes compared to reducing spending and reducing taxes.
Who are you going to increase taxes on?
The public. And we know if we compare the UK to other Western European countries, we actually have less tax revenue as a percentage of GDP compared to many of our...
Who is that left to tax,
states.
Molly? Who is that left to tax?
Well, we proposed a number of things. So, for instance, you can equalise capital gains tax with...
extraordinarily damaging for the economy as a whole.
A proposal originally supported and then delivered by Nigel Lawson in the 80s, maybe you were a fan of. And there was the gambling tax, we've proposed. You can introduce gambling tax.
So we can open up a huge black market in the gambling sector, so everybody goes to the illegal market. Molly, I don't think that there is any room at all for tax rises. No government in this country, at least, have raised taxes above the current level, about 37%. We've not been able to do it in the past. I don't believe we're able to do it in the future because we'll be on the other side of the Laffer curve. Do we know about the Laffer curve?
We do know about the Laffer curve.
We're on the other side of the Laffer curve. We're raising less money.
Let's not get too think tanky, but let me just read out a couple of messages. Your guests are so out of touch with the general public's opinion. The problem is Parliament and our civil service is packed with people of their ilk. I'm not sure it is. This is why Reform are gaining and leading the polls. We need change, and now, says Andrew in North Yorkshire. I'm not sure there are too many Reem Abrahams in the civil service. Frank in Bromley says there are think tanks and there's the real world. Farage is in the real world. Your guess or not. Another person says, you mentioned private businesses laying off staff due to the economy, yet the government grows and grows, taking on more and more civil servants. Howard says, how many jobs are there in the NHS and care sector? Because the strange thing is, look at the numbers we have imported in the last 3 years. We are told they are here for the NHS and care sector, but the numbers in vacancies in those sectors never seem to go down, says Howard. Listen, thank you both very, very much indeed. That is Reem Abraham, who is the head of media at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Marty Morris is the Associate Director of Migration, Trade and Communities at the Institute of Public Policy Research. Lots to chew on there. The phones are going. Send us your voice notes as well. Send us your texts. The numbers 0344 499 1000 is the number for phone calls, for voice messages, and indeed for WhatsApp text messages, all on that number. You can text me the traditional way, it's 72222 with the word talk in your text, or tweet me at talkTV, or follow me at Peter Cardwell. Lots more to come. We'll talk to Matt Vickers as well. He's the Shadow Home Office Minister. Stay with us here on Talk.
Ricky Chose did, standing in a crowd of people at a protest, saying those protesters over there need to have their throats cut and get every single one of them.
And he also said it in front of a camera.
Yes, in front of a camera. He's an elected official.
Much larger,
Absolutely. And he was released on bail, eventually had the expert advice of a very experienced criminal lawyer, a KC, whereas Lucy only had a duty solicitor and was very badly advised.
Yeah.
And then once Lucy was sentenced, in the sentencing remarks, the judge referenced diversity and inclusion. So there wasn't just a legal assessment of her tweet, there was a political one, in my opinion.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody for sending in your voice notes. Let's hear from Izzy. She sent one in.
Hello, Peter. Izzy from Kent here. The big thing, the big deal, the bottom line, I can't make it any clearer, is that it's all about fairness with immigration.
Correct.
Fairness. British people see it's unfair for the illegal immigrants to go to the top of the list while the everyday Joe Blogs go to the bottom of the list. That's on everything. Housing, NHS, dentists, you name it, we're at the bottom. So that's what it's all about. They're at the top, we're at the bottom. That's unfair. Full stop. Thanks, Peter. Bye.
Izzy, all I have to say about your message is that you have 100% hit the nail on the head. Thank you for it. Here's Mark.
Hiya Peter, I'm Mark from Manchester. I heard your guest there saying that Nigel Farage plan is not going to work. Well, over the last 15 years with Conservatives and Labour, tell me a plan what has worked. Simple as that. Until you try something and you've got your backbone to go ahead and do it, then nothing's going to work, is it? Get out the ECHR, everything will start falling into place. Thanks Peter, good show.
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. Paul is in Tyneside. First caller of the morning, 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us about what your thoughts are on small businesses.
Right, so hiya, Peter.
Hiya.
Right, so I don't know where to start, really, because I'm fuming, to be fair. This government, I employ about 23 people, okay, over 2 sites.
Okay.
And the 2 different sectors. One's childcare and one's manufacturing.
Yep.
And
2 absolutely essential bits to our economy. So you would expect, Paul, that the government would be saying, great stuff, Paul, good man, here's what we can do to help you. Are they doing that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I see, okay, when I talk around other businesses and stuff like that, we're all in the same boat. We are getting absolutely taxed to the hilt. Every time you turn the corner, there's something else going to hit you. You get hit with insurance hikes, everything. You know, I'm looking at, it's just absolutely.
So
this year's wrote off. This year's wrote off, Peter.
So I don't know if you heard what I was saying earlier about speaking to the guy in Scotland, the business owner in Scotland I spoke to yesterday. He's a friend of mine. I was chatting to him on the phone. We hadn't caught up in a little while. And he was telling me that he said that 2025 was the hardest year so far that he has had in his business. He's been in his business, which is another good part of the economy, retail, 25 years. He says that the national insurance rises. He just said, in his view anyway, Labour just doesn't get business.
It doesn't, and I totally agree with him. In 25 years, I've been going 25 years as well. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen with this government, and what I've seen, the apprenticeships and stuff like that, I won't take an apprentice on. I can't afford to.
You won't take an apprentice?
I can't.
Even though they're meant to be, they're incentives to businesses like you to say, take an apprentice on in manufacturing, give these people the skills, and then maybe employ them at the end. Is that just totally out of the realms of possibility in terms of where you are financially?
Absolutely. The problem which we've got is we've got uncertainty. Where we can't see a clear future. We can't. The light at the end of the tunnel is a bloke with a torch.
Yes. Yeah? Or the headlights of an oncoming train.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the worry.
Yeah.
Because what we've got is we can't see a future. We can't see a stable future. Nothing which this government is doing is standing up to scrutiny. It's coming up with plans. It's coming up with things. It's not following through. And then when it changes its mind, I mean, you got Starmer, okay? He's not even in the country. He's using the Ukraine as a side swipe, so people aren't looking at what's actually going on in this country. Yeah. He's using the right wing. He's hitting the right wing, okay? You know, the far right, the patriots, the people like myself. I've served this country. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got lots of friends who are veterans as well.
Yeah.
You know, and we look and we think, why did we do it for? The immigrants coming over and stuff like that. Okay, fair enough. Okay, yes, if they're coming from a war-torn place, but you know what? We're an island. We're full.
Yeah.
We need to start wiping along.
I think a lot of people will be really, really in your corner this morning, Paul, and that is just, I mean, Paul, you're the second person I've heard from. I spoke about that guy in Scotland yesterday who was telling me all about his business. Maybe we can get some answers from the Conservatives on this. Matt Vickers is the Shadow Home Office Minister. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
I want to talk to you about immigration, but I also want to talk to you about the economy a little bit, because we've just heard there from Paul in Tyneside. I don't know how much of that conversation you heard, but Paul is a small businessman. He employs 23 people. He has 2 businesses. One is childcare. The other one is involved in manufacturing. I was chatting to Paul about a Scottish business owner I spoke to yesterday, his business in Scotland, where he had employed 27 people. He's had to lay off 7 of them. He now has 20. This is a retail business on 3 different sites. He told me he was working, he's the top man, and he told me he was working a Saturday yesterday for the first time, simply because their staff members have reduced. He's not complaining about that. He's a grafter, but he said that he usually didn't have to work Saturdays. He's also said that his national insurance bill has gone up to the level it was when he had 27 staff, even though he now has 20. What alternative can you offer, Matt Vickers, to say that business will be, and small businesses in particular, many of the grafters we have who watch and listen to this station, maybe entrepreneurs setting up their own business, maybe people who are part of small businesses, what can you say to them that's different to what the government is going to do that you would do?
The reality is that this country is built on the backs of those small businesses. Our entire economy is built on it. They fund the public services that everybody uses. And by taxing them to death, as we've seen by this Labour government, whether it be that national insurance increase, that jobs tax, we know what that's costing businesses. You've just heard a horrific example of that. The changes to business rates on small businesses. Many leisure hospitality businesses are being hit with an increased business rates bill that's having a huge toll on them and their ability to operate. And then we're seeing this legislation come down the line, this unemployment bill, the employment rights bill, or whatever Labour want to brand it, that's going to put more red tape on employers and make it even harder to create jobs. The reality of throwing people on the scrap heap, taking them out of work, because you've got to remember 14% more people are now unemployed since Labour came to office. The reality is that the taxpayer has to pick up the tab for supporting them. There's less money going into our economy. There are less jobs to be had. Horrific situation. And not only, spending more is great, but actually if you tax everybody to death who pays for everything, they can't continue to fund you. The government should be on the side of those makers, of the doers, of the people who do the right thing, who create jobs, who pump money into our economy and deliver the growth, and they're just not. The consequences not only are being seen by them, with shops shut on every high street, but it's also going to be seen by taxpayers who are going to be taxed even more to make up for the losses and the lack of receipts received by the Chancellor.
So what is your alternative, Matt? You've diagnosed the problem. What would the Conservatives do? Would you reduce taxes? Would you reverse, for example, the national insurance rises on small businesses?
That's exactly where we're at. The problem is that they're making such a big mess that we're going to have to see what state the economy is in by the time we get it back. But the reality is we are on the side of small businesses. That's why under us, some of those small businesses on the high street were paying half of the rates that they're now paying.
You had the highest taxation since the Second World War as a proportion of GDP under the Conservatives, man. I mean, you can't say you're on the side of small businesses.
Tax was high. It's now gone up exponentially. Ridiculous. Those businessmen, that chap who you was just speaking to, was a hell of a lot better off. He said he employed 27 people. He's now employing 20 people and employing the same tax bill. That is not sustainable. These people are the people who prop up our economy. We need to be on their side. We need to go back to a situation where we're supporting them, where we aren't hitting them with increases to business rates, where we aren't making it so difficult for people to create jobs and give people opportunities. Because you know who misses out? It's the young people who are going to get the first job because they don't get it anymore. Because that guy is looking at his business. He can't create that other opportunity that he was going to give to the young guy who's going to get on
the apprenticeship.
Okay.
Let's turn to
going to get worse when she comes back for more money at their next budget.
Okay, let's talk about Home Affairs, which is your brief. Nigel Farage's plan has slightly pulled the rug from under you, hasn't it? Do you think it'll work?
I wouldn't say so. You can polish things and tweet them all you want, but actually the reality is it's about the detail. We've been in the House of Commons putting forward amendments. We put forward a deportation bill. We haven't just done a press release and tweeted about it. We've put it forward in the House of Commons, giving people the opportunity to vote on some of the amendments.
But the fact is that that's not going to make it. But Matt, that's not going to make a difference because it's going to get voted down. Whereas Nigel Farage, riding high in the polls, every poll, about over 70 polls recently, are saying that his party will be the biggest party, possibly even a majority after the next election. These are tangible things that could be implemented from day one in 2029. You're nowhere.
Well, the reality is that people like you are talking about what he's got to say in his tweets and his press releases while we're trying to put forward a plan. But if the journalists and the press keep talking about Farage, then I'm sure he's going to get more of a platform.
It's not the journalists and the media. It is not the journalists and the media who are behind Nigel Farage's success. It's Nigel Farage who's behind Nigel Farage's success. Do you honestly think 35% of the population is going to listen to me and decide how they're going to vote? That's nonsense. Your party has had 14 years. They failed. They had an election where you've been absolutely trounced. Now Nigel Farage has an alternative out there. It's not what I say, it's what people are actually responding to.
Instead of talking to me about Nigel Farage's latest tweet and whatever he's had to say, you should be talking about what we're doing.
It's a policy. It's a policy that's very similar to one that you wanted to do. So do you think it'll work? And if not, why not?
I think you need a detailed plan. The reality is, when you look at things like the Epping Hotel is being closed because Conservative councillors didn't just tweet about it and say something to the press. They went in there, they got a detailed plan together that meant they could put forward a case that will see that hotel close. Next week, we're going to be bringing all Conservative councillors together to share that best practice, to share those details so we can close more of those hotels and put more pressure on the government to bring back a deterrent so that when people arrive in this country illegally, they're detained and removed. That's what it's all about. It's about detailed plans, detailed consideration that you can actually make things happen. It's all well and good tweeting. It's all well good saying things. There might be popular things. The reality is we know what we've got to do. We've got to detain. We've got to remove. And that's
well, Nigel Farage would say the same thing. I just wonder when you see those protests that happen, for example, in all those different places that they have happened right across the country. We've seen lots and lots of different protests. Bristol, Exeter, Tamworth, Cannock, Nuneaton, Liverpool, Wakefield, Newcastle, Horley and Surrey, Canary Wharf in central London. We've seen lots of protests, the majority of them completely peaceful, although there have been about 15 arrests over the past 24 hours. What do you think? What goes through your mind, Matt?
I think it's British people frustrated by an utterly ridiculous situation.
Do you understand they're frustrated with you as well?
I'm entirely frustrated. I'm as frustrated as anyone.
You understand they're frustrated with you and Labour?
Since the last election, the number of people arriving in this country has gone up nearly 50%. That is unacceptable. It's dangerous. We need to get the legislation back in place. We had legislation. Bill, it was law in this country that if you broke into the country, if you came here illegally, you would be detained and you would be removed and sent back. They've actually repealed all that legislation. They've took it out. So even when they arrive at the fact that this is the only way to deal with it, they're going to have to start from the drawing board. It's ridiculous. We can't go on like this. There's a huge cost to the taxpayer. There's a huge security concern for people who are living in these towns where there's huge groups of lone men hanging around the town centre. And then we see the very worst of it in Epping. And actually, when it comes to Epping, the example that's on the table, Kemi got down there. Which other party leader did you see down there? You didn't see them. We are on the side of the British people. We share their concerns, and we're going to bring forward a plan to deal with them, a properly detailed plan. That deportation bill has been published. We will get these people sent back.
OK, Matt Vickers, Shadow Home Office Minister, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Thanks also to Jane, who says, as an MP, I like Matt Vickers. Unfortunately for his party, they won't win the next election. Kemi will never cut through. If they end up with a Lib Dem kind of leader, they will get no seats, says Jane. Well, thank you for that, Jane. And James says, I am a non-working pensioner and still pay tax like many others. Some of your guests forget that. He's in Glasgow. Thank you for all your messages. Keep them coming in. We're going to talk to the former government advisor on political violence and disruption, Lord Walney, in just a second, John Woodcock. If you have questions for him or things you want to get on the air, give us a shout. 0344 499 1000.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 11 o'clock. Lots to discuss this morning between now and 1 o'clock. I'm actually back tomorrow between 10 and 1 as well, identifying as Julia Hartley-Brewer. We're asking the question whether Starmer's reforms, perhaps even just tweaks to the asylum system announced today, will actually stop the need to protest. What do you think? Maybe you're on one of the protests. Starmer to curb judges' powers in asylum cases. That's the front page of the Sunday Times. As protests over the use of migrant hotels grow, the Prime Minister overhauls the appeal system to cut the backlog. How much confidence do you have in the Prime Minister that this will actually work? We're also talking about those protests right across the country, all sorts of places: Bristol, Exeter, Cannock, Nuneaton, Liverpool, Wakefield, Newcastle, all over the place. In Scotland as well, Aberdeen and Perth. Mould in Wales also holding protests. We'll talk to Lord Walney in just a second, John Woodcock. He's the former government advisor on political violence and disruption. We'll get your views on all sorts of things, and in about half an hour's time actually we're going to talk to an expert on exam grades and motivation and students. He was really popular the last time he was on. If you've any thoughts for him, if you want to ask him about your kids or how they're getting on or what they want to do at sixth form or university, now's the time. You pick up the phone and make the call 0344 499 1000 to get your views on the air about anything that we're talking about today. That's the phone call number. It's also the number for voice notes. We'll take more of those in a second. You can also text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, as I say. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with me here on Talk. Well, thank you to Tad Davison in Cambridge, who says, I'm mystified as to why a great deal more isn't made of assimilation. That is a massive problem, if not an intractable problem. It is far easier for a European to fit in with us Brits than someone who heralds from an entirely alien culture who are doing their level best to change everything we have come to know and value. Thousands of years of history is said to be wiped out in a generation through nepotism. That's what I venture. It is what gets people's backs up the most, says Tad. Thank you to Penny in Essex as well, who says every doctor gets £158 to see a migrant and they get a half-hour appointment. Fact, we get 10 minutes. That's if we're lucky to get one at all. No wonder people are seething, says Penny. Penny, I'm not familiar with that particular thing, but certainly there are, I know there are GPs that are absolutely, that are assigned to migrants and so on, and there are so many privileges that many asylum seekers get that many people, Indigenous people, do not. And we heard from Matt Vickers a minute ago. Rich in Cheltenham says, how I laughed when Matt said the Conservatives were behind small and medium-sized businesses. Philip Hammond started dividend tax. Hunt increased corporation tax by 30%, and many business owners are giving nothing during COVID, while some were paid £2,500 a month, says Rich in Cheltenham. Well, let's talk about the protest. Let's talk about Palestine Action. Let's talk about the state of our country and whether perhaps the changes that Starmer is putting through in terms of asylum will actually help things, will stop political violence, will help community cohesion, will stop perhaps even the need for those protests. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Well, Lord Walney is with us. He's the former government advisor on political violence and disruption. John, great to see you this morning. I just wonder what your reaction is to the fact that there have been so many protests, most of them peaceful, although there have been about 15 arrests overnight in all these places right across the country. There's huge and palpable frustration out there, isn't there?
Yes, it does. It does point again to the degree of anger and frustration with the slowness of the asylum immigration system, the demand for change that people feel that they've been making for a long time and haven't been properly heard and understood by a succession of governments. And if those governments have heard them, then they haven't put in place the measures that are required with the level of effectiveness to actually make a palpable change. So I really welcome the government's announcement today of this new fast-track system, but of course people's faith in the announcement of a system to bring change has gone many years ago, and they won't be satisfied unless they see any new system actually working and making a difference, and I completely understand that.
What difference should it make? Because we have about 51,000 people at the moment who are waiting to be processed. They're asylum seekers waiting to be processed. 32,000 in hotels. That's what these protests are about. We also have asylum seekers waiting an average of 53 weeks to be processed, to basically be told either you're here legally or you're not. Why is it taking so long, John, do you think? And of course that is fueling what so many people's anger in regard to this.
Yeah, that's right. When you look at the system, in one way it boils down to two very simple metrics. You've got to reduce the number of people who are coming in to apply for asylum. The inflow has got to be lessened, and the outflow of people being processed and, when they are refused, being returned to their country or another safe country has got to be increased. And those two things have been going wrong for a long time, and therefore you've got this build-up in communities, which is making so many people close to these asylum hotels deeply unhappy. So I really hope, and it's good to see the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper targeting the problem of the length of time that it takes to process those things. I happen to believe that the problems within the modern asylum system are so acute that we do need to much more actively look at the European Convention on Human Rights and the ways in which that has become a barrier to...
Do you agree with what Lord Blunkett said yesterday, John? Do you agree?
Yeah, and frankly, I think that is going to happen in this country. And my message for my friends in the Labour Party is either they own it as the government and put in place something which is effective but still meets the basic tenets of fairness, or a little bit further down the track, someone else is going to do it with worse consequences across a range of levels.
So it's interesting you mentioned that about the European Convention on Human Rights, because Lord Blunkett has given advice on that, the former Home Secretary now in the House of Lords. He's given advice to Keir Starmer about that. Do you think Keir Starmer will take it? Because a lot of this, as you know, can be solved with political will if that political will exists.
Yeah, that's right, and I was pleased to see David speaking out, because he was a great Home Secretary for the Labour government back in the day, and he's someone who just understands where people in working class communities are coming from, and was never afraid to just tell it like it is. So yes, I hope Keir listens to that, and the position, as I understand it, within Labour at the moment is that Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, has rightly identified a problem with the system. They want to have a review about how much of that is perception and process and practices and culture that has grown up around the convention without needing to actually change or relieve the convention itself. And then if they believe that changes are needed, then to try to seek agreement across the members of the signatory of the Convention on Human Rights to get those changes in. And my fear on that is that the process could be too slow, and we know from the recent history of, well, I mean, decades of history of trying to renegotiate things within a European context, but particularly on Brexit, of course, that it is very, very difficult to get a unanimity across a group of nations on those changes. So I think a more radical option has to be on the table. Because again, as I say, if Labour doesn't own this, then it's going to be one of the other parties who comes in and does it.
You mentioned the Ministry of Justice there, and Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary. There are a new proposal from Labour for judges to be given new powers to punish offenders with bans that curtail freedom. This is criminals to face football, travel, club and pub bans. I just wonder what you think of that idea, and also whether you think that if they can curb previous people who have been criminals previously, what the rules are and whether they should be extended in regard to people who attend protests, John, political protests.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It sounds like a very sensible idea that Shivana is going to be bringing in terms of controlling where people are known troublemakers in footballing context. And this is one of the ideas which I've been calling for, and government ministers, I think, have been looking at in the past, about being able to target the ringleaders of protest movement, people who of extreme criminal protests, to be able to stop them from travelling to protest. Now, I think the framework is in place to do that, but I don't think it has been used nearly enough. And what you've seen the growth of in recent months and years is criminal organisations like Palestine Action, which have now been controversially, but in my view, rightly prescribed. Up until that point of prescription, those ringleaders have been running rings around the system in being able to organise these militant criminal actions across a range of territories.
Well, it's interesting, John. It's interesting, just
having really any curtail on their ability to do that, and that is a problem, and it needs to stop.
It's interesting in regard to Palestine Action, because there are, of course, many on the left who say, well, what has someone sitting on the ground with a piece of card saying, I support Palestine Action, got to do with terrorism, and they're worried about free speech and so on. What would you say to them, John?
That people are free to say almost anything that they like about what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, and indeed they do so. You can't move within Westminster for people making lurid and often entirely devoid of evidence claims, and that is just what happens. What is going on at the moment with Palestine Action is that there is a very deliberate, systematic and cynical attempt to try to basically overwhelm the criminal justice system by having people knowingly breaking the law by showing their support for this organisation that has been prescribed. And the law in this country is very simple. You have the right to try to change the law, to say that you don't agree with something and you want things to be different. You do not have the right to break the law in doing that. That is what's happening, and it is trying to obscure the fact that Palestine Action were prescribed. They were banned after a 5-year-long campaign of criminal sabotage, which deeply intimidated many working people across the country, caused many millions of pounds worth of damage, and for which there are very serious charges going through the judicial system at the moment, involving the use of a sledgehammer against a police officer and security.
And people forget that the
grannies having a walk in the park.
Well, exactly. And you're absolutely right, John. And people forget this, and they say, "Oh, it's only a bit of spray paint and a few planes." Well, actually, the charges, and we'll be careful what we say, of course, but there are very, very serious allegations of horrendous thuggery and violence against some of the people involved with Palestine Action. Obviously, they're entitled to a fair trial, as is everybody else. But it isn't just grannies having a walk in the park. And also, the point I would make to people who say I support Palestine Action, just delete the word action. Just take the word action. Just get some Tip-X and put it over the word action. And I support Palestine. Fine, you're within the law. You don't need to support a banned and indeed prescribed organisation.
Yeah, exactly so. And the organisers of this are trying to draw many people into this action, trying to create a kind of I am Spartacus effect, and it's going to potentially ruin people's lives. And I'm particularly concerned about the university season coming up. New wave of young people arriving at university, many who will be feeling deeply, passionately about a sense of injustice in Gaza, want to do something, being told by campaigners that this is the way to enact change, and then end up potentially with a criminal record for a terrorism offence that is going to hang around their neck for the rest of their lives,
very long time.
and potentially get in the way of many things that they want to do. And it doesn't have to be this way. People can, even if they want, I don't agree with this, but they can contest, they can campaign, they can try to get Palestine Action off the prescribed list if they really want to.
Yeah, you can say I disagree with their prescription.
Do that in a way, without actually deliberately breaking the law to make a point, which is what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. Well, John, let neither of us is Spartacus, but let no one say we're not as handsome as Kirk Douglas was in that film. Lord Wolney there, John Woodcock, thank you very much indeed. He's the former government advisor on political violence and disruption. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. We'll play a couple of voice notes and get some of your calls and texts and tweets in just a minute here on Talk.
What we see with the protests there, I see really a class divide. I'm really proud to be working class. I come from a council house in Bolton. I live in Stoke-on-Trent. And what I see with these protests in Epping, and you've got all across the country as far as Perth in Scotland, Cardiff in Wales, but across England as well, it is the working class people who live, a few miles away from those hotels, who are simply sick and tired of this. They're sick and tired of people being shipped in who they know nothing about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Daz in Derby, who says, what would happen if the border force took people to back to the Port Cali to see if anybody would come of it? Why don't we just try it? Great show, says Daz. Thank you to Anna and Surrey. Says, do no political commentators or politicians understand the actual problem? The British people don't want them processed any quicker. We want them gone. We don't want any more immigration, legal or illegal. Thanks to everybody who's got in touch on Twitter as well. I've been looking through that during the break. And Ian says, hi Peter, the biggest growth area is security staff due to the rise in shoplifting and violence towards staff in hospitals, chemists and doctors' surgeries, they're in there as well. Another person says, Farage has flip-flopped more times than a school of fish on land. I don't trust him either, but I trust Labour and the Tories even less. I still think Rupert Lowe is the man for this job. On Matt Vickers, the Conservative we spoke to about half an hour ago, Dan says, absolutely deluded as usual is old Matt Vickers. Let's hope there's an economy left when we get it back. You're not getting it back, Matt. You killed it and put in this place we're in now. You're done. Stop thinking we'll ever vote for you again. And Gary takes exception to what Reem Abraham has been saying, as quite a few people have as well. Nice to know the guest you had on doesn't give a damn about tomorrow's pensioners. Today's workforce pay for today's pensioners, as well as bring up the next generation to carry on this cycle. Thank you also to Brian, who says, my worry, Peter, with regards to the 51,000 outstanding immigration claims is that these will be processed quickly and a huge majority will just be rubber stamped and allowed into the country just to get the figures down, a typical hallmark of this government. Brian, I think that is a very well-founded unfounded fear. Let's hear a voice note from Karen.
Sorry, Peter, it wasn't the Conservatives that got the Epping Hotel closed down. It was people power, because that's what they have to listen to at the end of the day. And just remember, September the 13th is going to be a huge march in London. I hope over 1 million people join this march, because then they will listen. It's not about them getting things done. It's about the people making sure they get the things done. It's not Conservative power. It's people power. We've had enough. And finally, they're going to have to listen. And you know what? They're not going to get in next time, because what he said about the economy, oh, it depends what Labour do to it. What they're going to get in again and say for the next 4 years they're in, oh, sorry, we can't fix the economy because Labour left it in such a state. That's what we get from Labour now. They are the uni party. We see through them. We see you. You're not getting in again, ever.
Karen, thanks for your thoughts there. Let's talk to Kevin in Basingstoke. Kevin, what are your thoughts on the protest? I think you've given us a shout about that.
Well, apparently there's been 26 protests outside hotels.
Yeah,
but
something like that.
People protesting is tiny. There's more people protesting against the protesters.
That's been the case in some of the protests, but there are a lot of people who feel very, very strongly about this, Kevin.
Well, I don't feel that strongly. They're not protesting, are they? I think it's all whipped up. I mean,
you think it's all whipped up?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, we've got bigger problems in this country than asylum seekers.
What are the bigger problems, do you think, Kevin?
Inequality, the wealth gap, politics, like political parties take money from billionaires and they work in their interests and not ours. I mean, what about all we've had hundreds of thousands of people coming from Ukraine and Hong Kong, but they're not blamed for anything.
They've come through the legal routes that exist for them to do so, though. And actually, I mean, you're right. We have had a lot of compassion shown, particularly towards people from Ukraine. There's still people from Ukraine in people's homes. It's the illegal immigration that most people who seem to care about.
Yeah, but it's not illegal. It's not illegal to come here and claim asylum.
It's illegal to come here on a small boat. That is an illegal act.
It's not illegal to come here. If you come here and claim asylum, once you get here, very quickly.
There's nothing illegal about claiming asylum, but it is an illegal act and has been since 2002 to come over on a small boat. That is an illegal act.
Well, apparently Nigel Farage says he's going to send 5 planes a day with asylum seekers back to their own country. Well, most asylum seekers coming here are from Afghanistan, Syria, Eritrea, Iran. We haven't got return agreements for those countries.
He said he has argued that he will get a return agreement with those countries.
What, with Afghanistan?
That's what he says. That's what he says, Kevin.
Oh, come off it. I mean, has he got 5 planes that are going to take these people to their own country then? What planes is he going to use?
You sound relatively sceptical, Kevin.
Well, I mean, he's always saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you ask a few questions, he ain't got the answers.
Well, we have asked those questions. I mean, do you think this is pie-in-the-sky stuff?
Of course it is. I mean, if there was an easy solution, it would have been done by now.
Do you think this government wants to solve the immigration problem, Kevin?
Well, I think they want... Well, I don't think it is necessarily a massive problem.
You don't think it's a massive problem? I mean, lots of people disagree with you, Kevin. A lot of people would say, if you've got even on paper, you've got 51,000 people who are here illegally, or have many of whom have arrived here illegally, who are asylum seekers who need to be processed. I mean, that is a problem, isn't it?
If there wasn't a single asylum seeker in this country, we'd still have the same problems. The NHS would still be in a mess. Local councils would be in a mess. They're not to blame for our problems. It's politicians that are to blame. Okay. They rule the country, not asylum seekers. Asylum seekers, it's just easy. Oh, blame the asylum seekers. I mean, what about the richest 1% of people in this country have got more wealth than the bottom 70%?
Well, we can talk about that as well. Absolutely. I think my view, and I know you disagree with me, Kevin, but my view is they're both problems. So listen, thanks for your thoughts, Kevin. I appreciate that. Elma is in Liverpool and wants to talk about migration. Elma, what would you like to say?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
It's Elma here, and it's a great show.
Thank you.
I listen to it all the time.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask, when the asylum seekers or illegal immigrants come into this country on a boat and they throw their passport in the sea, and you've got they've got no phones or anything like that. When they're putting them through the process, how do we know who they are?
Well, we don't, and this is the point, Alma. And we believe them when they say they're fleeing persecution. We believe them when they say they're coming from very, very difficult states. And the thing is that, 3 out of 4 of those people are granted asylum. That's higher than many other countries. And we're in a situation where a lot of that just isn't verified. It could, in theory, be verified if you had things like DNA tests, if you had things like facial recognition, if you had, if you had greater checks. But the fact is that just doesn't happen. And I do query the fact that there are a lot of people coming here from, yes, absolutely, Afghanistan and places like Eritrea, where they would argue they're fleeing persecution. But the point is, France is a safe country, always go back to that. But the fact is we don't know who's coming here, Alma. We don't know who's coming here. And those are just the people who are processed. They're people who slip into the system, who disappear. And we don't know who's in this country. That is the fact. We don't know how many people are in this country. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know how they're working, whether they're being working legally or illegally. Some people are being kept as slaves, sex slaves. It's an awful thing, Alma, and it needs to be sorted out. Have you any confidence that this government can sort it out?
No confidence in this government whatsoever. We're letting murderers in, we're letting rapists in. And, if they say that they're a really good citizen, we've got to believe that, which is wrong. Yeah. It's so wrong. And, I just think England is France's Rwanda.
It's a very good point.
And they don't have to pay a penny. Yeah. We pay them.
Correct.
For them to send them here. It's an absolute joke. And this one in, one out is also a joke. Yeah. But it does worry me about, they go through the process. Have you ever committed any crimes? No, I haven't. Yeah. And they could have a crime as long as you're on.
Well, who is going to... Yeah, well, who is going to actually say, oh, yeah, by the way, fair cop gov, I have done that. Alma, great call. Give me a ring anytime. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Steve Formby has been in touch and says, morning, Peter. All conversation hinges around our government. Too much of it. I would rather depict Labour's time in power more animatedly. A tortoise rolling down a hill and stopping on its back, says Steve. Leslie says, what exactly has Starmer achieved? GB energy, defence increase, NHS improvements, new airports. It's all spin. It's all money as well, Leslie. If you fire money at a problem, you can say you've done things. That's fair enough to say, well, we're doing this. But if you're paying an awful lot of money in order to do so, well, that's much more difficult. Dan in Kent says, all I'm hearing across my travels delivering timber is people, mainly in the building industry and agriculture, going to the protest plan next month. They certainly wouldn't be going, but I believe it's going to be massive, says Dan. Shane says, Keir Starmer is scrambling around for policies which won't work unless he adopts Nigel Farage's policy, detains and sends all illegals to a third country. He's never going to tackle the problem. It's not a policy which needs to be argued against, as there's already proof it works. Australia and Greece, to take but 2 examples. Thank you so much to everybody for all your messages. We'll get to more of those. Many voice notes coming in as well. We'll play some of those. We'll also talk about the results that are out this week. GCSEs, A-levels were out last week. We'll talk to a very popular guest, Dr. Tej Samani. If you have any thoughts for him, if you have any questions, maybe you're a young person listening thinking, hold on a second, what on earth do I do next? Well, give us a ring, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. Just before I go to our next guest, I just want to play a couple of voice notes to hear what people have been saying about Rachel Reeves. Kelvin has been in touch.
That idiot has just said Rachel Reeves has got no other choices. Yes, she has. They can stop giving money away to all these different countries, you know, all the foreign countries they like supporting. You know, stop giving millions to France for stopping the boats, which really is import more terrorists into our country. You know, and stop giving them money, you know, millions for their farmers when they're punishing our farmers. You know, scrap the net green agenda because it's not going to bloody work anyway. You know, the climate change projects and all that lot need scrapping. It's just costing us millions and millions. And stop giving all this money to the migrants. There's your choice. See, stop all that lot. They don't get it though, do they? No, they'd rather just keep taxing us and keep giving it away. And then when we've got no money, they keep borrowing. And who has to pay it back? Not the people that they're giving the money to, but the people, the taxpayers of this country have to pay these loans back. Total full of, I would say, but I'm on the radio. Anyway, have a good day, Peter. Bye.
Calvin, thank you, and thank you for neglecting to use the word that was in your head. I think we can say perhaps rubbish. One thing that hasn't been rubbish is many people's GCSE and A-level results. They've been talking to quite a number of young people who've done very, very well as a result of their hard work, and also some of the coaching that they've had as well. Dr. Tej Samani is with me now in the studio as well. Great to see you again. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me back. Good to see you.
He's Chief Executive and founder of Performance Learning. Evie is with us as well, Evie Roodhouse, who's a student at Brighton Hill Community School, and her mum's with us as well, Caroline Roodhouse. Good to have you both with us. We'll come to Tej in a second, but Evie, maybe you could just talk me through what's been happening with you, because GCSEs, of course, all these exams that are happening, very, very difficult, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a pretty big shift from year 10 to year 11. The pressure shifts completely. Year 11's are going to be a stressful year because, you know, it's exams. They're never a particularly pleasant thing, but I think with the right level of planning and preparation, you can make it a lot easier for yourself.
So what did you do? Was it tough for you? Did you change your ways? What happened?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I knew that I wanted to go in balancing out revision. I know a lot of people who kind of put it off until the last minute and then had to cram in revising everything in the last few weeks before exams. I tried my best to kind of balance it out throughout year 11. So we went to kind of after school revision sessions and clubs that the teachers had put on, all about trying to get that preparation done in advance so that the actual exam season was a bit easier for us.
Caroline, from your perspective, it's tough to see young people who are, you know, struggling, who are trying to get these exams out of the way. Almost everybody has to do them, and Evie, you've done brilliantly. I'm just seeing a look at your results here, 8s and 7s. I mean, really, really good stuff. And there's obviously been intense revision that you've done. You've got through that pressure. Caroline, for you as a mum, how do you best support your kids?
It's a great question. I think I'm very lucky that both my children are very academic and they love learning. So it wasn't too much of a challenge to encourage Evie. In fact, it was probably harder to encourage her to remember to take the downtime as well. So try not to overdo it with the revision, try not to put too much pressure on yourself, because I think that there's that risk as well. So encouraging the fresh air and all the boring things that parents do encourage, and stepping away from the books for a while. So it's, again, I think if you use the word balance, it's finding the right amount of balance and making sure that with all of the other challenges that they have that can cause all of this anxiety, that there's that balance with fun and downtime as well.
I'll come back to you both in just a second, but I just want to talk to Tej Samani, the Chief Executive and founder of Performance Learning. Tej, we spoke to you before.
Yeah.
What would you say to people who are, you know, either dealing with results that they're perhaps not entirely happy with, or alternatively going in and starting a course, GCSEs, A-levels or whatever? How can you start kind of now at the start, get the right habits, so by the end you get what you want?
Yeah. So to start with the right habits, I'm a big believer, and this is somewhat controversial, but we need to sort of have this whole process of what to learn and how to learn as a dual exercise. So we go to school, it's Monday morning, I've got double math, they're teaching me what to learn.
I get to Friday, have I really learned how to learn what I learned on that Monday morning? So if you're starting year 10, heading into year 11 now, it's your final sort of big year that you've been prepping for the last 4 years. Really try to kind of combine this effort of the how and the what, so that automatically your Monday morning double math, you've studied the what, you're going back home and you've got some skills to learn how. If you're a pupil who, let's face it, and even then, Peter, I mean, it's been some considerable time, not to reveal my age now, since I had my GCSE results, but this last couple of weeks just makes me regress back into school days. And
I get the nightmares. I get it
lives with you, right?
Yeah, this time of year, I get the nightmares about being in the wrong, having not revised, being in the wrong. I get them every year. I get them. I'm 41. It's 23 years since I sat an exam.
Yeah. Well, I'm very close to you. I'm 38, and it still feels like, I mean, obviously I have the thing of, with hundreds of schools having to live it every single day with all of our pupils. But if you're a pupil today who opened up that envelope last week and thought, this is not what I wanted. I know it currently does feel, it's the first weekend after results day, like it's the end of the world, but really it's not. I mean, it happened to me. Academia is a very long journey, and life is a long game. So think of this, I know it's a silly analogy, but think of this as just kind of one selfie. It's a snapshot. It's a moment in your life. And stop sort of asking yourself kind of why me to what now, and just look at your dialogue, change it, start planning for what's next. And you'll find, I'm a big believer in this sort of kind of setting up a 10-year plan. As you know, you look back on this 10 years from now, is it really going to make the difference?
What if you are there's a boy I know who should remain nameless, who is about 13 years old. He's a great lad. Doesn't like school, just not for him. What would you say to him? How would you kind of coach him a little bit and say, right, actually, how can you find the things you love, especially at that age, before you get to GCSEs, where you're not even getting rid of the useless subjects like geography?
So without sitting here and giving a 4-hour seminar, Peter, to the boy and to you, I think the first thing we've got to do is really look at why. Because school equals learning, and if learning equals pain, they're going to associate more pain to learning, and therefore school. Learning is a skill that he's going to have to learn throughout his whole life. And I think when we can begin to start to improve his relationships with how he learns and what he's learning, all of a sudden he might start to like school and enjoy school. Having said that, there is this myth that you need to wake up every day and just be so excited at the thought of double math, science, geography, history, French, and I could go on. All we've got to do is get the nation's pupils who were like me in school, absolutely detested every single element of it, to get good at it. And that's a life lesson. And if we can start to teach that in year 7, 8, and 9, to actually get good at the things we don't enjoy, you know this, we're grown up. How many times during the week do we have to be good at the things you and I don't enjoy doing? That's just part of life.
Well, let's ask Evie, actually. Evie, how did you get good at the things you didn't enjoy? You're now making your choices, maybe you have already, for A-levels, presumably, or the next steps in your educational path. I just wonder, I mean, is there a, I'm looking at your list of results here, which are all brilliant, by the way. Are there some of them, is there one or two there that you just thought, oh, for goodness sake, I just don't want to do this, but you just had to get yourself into the mindset saying, right, for the next 6 months or whatever it is, I'm just going to get through this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the beginning of secondary, I was much more interested in English and the creative subjects. I used to absolutely hate maths and science. I was rubbish at them. I was getting really low grades. I was struggling to pass. And it got to sort of year 10, end of year 10, start of year 11. And I thought I really need to find a way to make myself enjoy revising maths and science. And I tried so many different methods, flashcards, doing online quizzes, all sorts. And I think I found what works for me. I think with every student it's going to be slightly different, but I found that with each subject there was a certain method of revising that worked for me, and I ended up starting to really enjoy revising maths and science. And
you started enjoying revising maths and science. I mean, Caroline, did you ever think you would hear those words come out of your daughter's mouth?
No, I didn't, because I never said those words. But the irony is that she's arguably done better in maths and science than she did in English, which was her passion subject. So I always thought you were better at one subject than the other, or you'd kind of be an English person or a maths person, but Evie's kind of turned out to be pretty good at all of them. And I think that's a lot of that is down to hard work and commitment and just knowing that you've got to get your head down and get on with it.
Listen, thanks to both of you, thanks to Evie and Caroline, really appreciate you joining us. I want to go back to Tej. We've just got a couple of questions that various people have sent in. I've no idea what subjects to take for GCSE. I don't know what I want to do in the future. What would you say to that person?
Firstly, that's okay, right? It's okay to not know what you need to do in the future, and I think we need to start to filter things back. What ultimately do you have a sense of? Oh, I'm interested in that to start with. So go with first point of interest. Number two, what do you find easy? What are you good at? And then number three, what do you actually need? And I think if you can operate a filtering system with those three things, you'll begin to start to uncover, actually, I'm going to give this a shot. And I don't really like this, but I need my English and maths, so I don't have a choice. I've got to get it done. And then I'm actually quite good at this, so this is something that I could be passionate about. And as for discussions around the future and what you want to do, I think enjoy your youth. You know, we live in this society today where we're scrolling every single minute, and we're seeing this illusion that is social media, where everyone has their life together, when in reality it's 9 times out of 10, you've seen this, a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. So there's no pressure. Life's a long game. It's going to take you a long time. If it does take you a long time to find what you enjoy and find what you're passionate about, that's okay as well. Don't rush into it.
You work with a lot of young people. What impact do you think COVID disruption has had? You're seeing people coming through now, doing GCSEs, A-levels and so on. That's had an impact, hasn't it?
Significant. As I mentioned the last time I was on here, that we go into schools and we assess kind of their attitude towards learning, the mental health and how they approach their subjects. And there's sort of 8 indicators, Peter, that I look at. And overwhelmingly, the indicator that we were already struggling in as a country got worse, which is one's ability to meet the demands of the curriculum. Do I have both the intellectual skills, so similar to what Evie said, when I'm looking at math or science or geography, do I know exactly how to learn those subjects? And then number 2, do I have the emotional resilience to be able to sustain that from year 7, 8, 9, 10? Pre-post-COVID, especially we've seen this ever sort of growing divide between London and everywhere else in the country, so the North and South debate, and that's gotten worse, and that's increased significantly pre and post COVID. This wasn't a COVID issue, it was getting worse. COVID kicked in. Everything that COVID sort of dealt on our doorstep to all of us kicked in, and this is the one metric that I've been shouting and screaming about, that if we don't fix this, we're going to continue to have this divide. And exactly, you've mentioned that 13-year-old boy who just doesn't like school. It's not the school, I feel, that is the issue. It's his relationship with how to learn his subjects that is making him feel school's the problem.
Yeah, we're going to keep talking to Tej. If you've thoughts that you want to get to him, a number of people have sent them in, do let us know. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
What we see with the protests there, I see really a class divide. I'm really proud to be working class. I come from a council house in Bolton. I live in Stoke-on-Trent. And what I see with these protests in Epping, and you've got all across the country, as far as Perth in Scotland, Cardiff in Wales, but across England as well, is the working class people who live, a few miles away from those hotels, who are simply sick and tired of this. They're sick and tired of people being shipped in who they know nothing about.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Chris, thank you for your message. My son just scowled at the radio when you can proclaim geography is useless. He wants to be a geographer. I'm afraid I am a historian and did history at university. Absolutely love history. Still to this day I read a lot of history books, and I'm afraid I'm very, very sniffy about geography and the people with their colouring pencils. But that's perhaps not the most the sort of fairest thing. What is the subject actually that people are most sniffy about? The one they really don't want to do? Is it maths or science or what is it?
Do you know what? It just depends on the pupil.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, it was math. And that was my kryptonite in school. It was just a phobia for me. Yeah. But it's so personal to every pupil. I think if we're going to be broad about the whole thing, I think certainly in my day, I enjoyed doing science because there was so many experiments we used to do, and it was kind of, and now it's just content based. But if you were to pick one that I come across day to day more than anything, especially with the demographic and the kind of types of pupils that I work with who were like me in school. It's maths.
No, I know
maths,
what you mean.
Physics, a lot of the problem solving, linear, analytical, quick on the spot.
I just had an appalling chemistry teacher, a number of not very good chemistry teachers, but one particularly bad one who I used to argue with about politics all the time. And my dad actually came in for the sort of school, the parent-teacher interview, and the guy said, I don't think Peter's going to win the Nobel Prize for chemistry, but if there's some sort of career that he could do arguing about politics, that might be something.
Look where we are.
And he was right, so maybe he wasn't that bad a
prediction.
teacher after all. Dr. Tej Samani is with me. He's Chief Executive and Founder of Performance Learning. Thank you to Joanna in Salisbury, who sent a message in saying, Hi Cardi P. A family member passed all her GCSEs, bar 1 English. It was literature she fell down on. The full year 10, they had no English teacher, a very low pass rate at the school. The school didn't prioritise the GCSE students, but prioritised younger years. Now she has to retake it and isn't able to get on the course she was supposed to do. I mean, there are some schools that are letting down their kids, Tej, aren't there?
Yes. It's the short answer to that question, and I think we are in this reset crisis right now where and what we started to see was certain colleges at the 11th hour started to raise the grade boundaries as well. And in old money, a lot of pupils who, even last year, let alone in the last sort of 10, 15 years, who were sort of at that 3-4 boundary mark would have got 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
So a note to this particular pupil that's a tough one. And with the requirements to have to reset English and maths. And this is why, again, it's so easy for me to come on a Sunday morning and kind of provide this sort of philosophical overview when a lot of pupils today are feeling this, this being the first weekend. But I urge you just to sort of look at this from 30,000 feet and start to adopt this sort of what's this there to teach me? What's the lesson in all of this? And how can I prove every single one of my teachers wrong that ever doubted me? Use this as fuel to the fire. Don't use this as a why me. Look, you're only going to be judged by a number on a piece of paper very few times in your life, and it's absolutely nuts that your intelligence, which it's not, exams aren't a true measure of intellect at this point in time in your life, or intelligence.
How do you balance, sorry to interrupt you, Tej, but how do you balance that? How do you say to young people, and actually older people as well, you say, right, there are a load of people who ring me, for example, we'll take more calls in a minute or two. There are a load of people who ring me, they've got really intelligent points, they've got really, they've thought about things an awful lot, they've come up with ideas, they've got good commentary on what the government's doing or not doing, and they'll say, I'm unemployed, or I'm someone who is in a non-academically traditional background. I'm a plumber, I'm a plasterer, whatever. That's great. All those people have exactly the same right to have their say on this station, and they'll have it as long as I sit in this chair. Of
course.
The problem is that we as a society don't value that, do we? I mean, I give the example of my friend who worked for 9 years, got a PhD, did loads of kind of extra work and lots of study to earn £28,000 a year, which is a fine salary, by the way, but it's lower than the national average to be a university lecturer. And then my plumber who came in a few months ago and charged me £92 to be in my flat for 7 minutes to fix a tap. Who's the intelligent one?
Yeah.
And why do we as a society say that one's intelligent and one is not intelligent when actually the plumber's a very intelligent guy who's running a small business, he's doing his books, and he's that values, that worries me, Tej. What do you think?
I completely and utterly agree with you. We're on the same page, and that's because for the first really from the age of 3 till 18, and that's not even if we go to, if our passion isn't to go to university, intelligence and cleverness, and this being in the classroom, words like genius, intelligence, the clever kids, the boffins, the ones who get it naturally, simply are the ones who have a higher natural tendency to be able to organize, structure, retain, recall, and apply information. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't measure intelligence in schools such as debating skills, conversational skills, ability to form an argument, ability to take a product to market, ability to price a product, ability to sell, negotiate, persuade, communicate. And as you know, Peter, these are all the skills that we have to then learn and almost unlearn what we learnt in school to relearn what we have to do to succeed in life. And until we change that, and that's a massive change, and one I really hope, and I've been lobbying now for the last 14 years, ministers after ministers, and trying to get this sort of shift in education to say, unless we start to actually measure intelligence in a very hyper-personalized fashion, in a fashion that rewards the individual for their natural skill set and builds their skills that they can do to flourish and thrive later in life, as opposed to, oh great, I got an A in math, or I got an A in physics, or I got an 8 in English, or I got a 7 in French, so therefore I'm more qualified and better than the person who got a 3, which is complete and utter bananas, as you know. We're going to be stuck in this loop. Where is the lesson on Monday morning on entrepreneurialism? Where is the lesson on Monday morning on leadership? Where is the lesson on Monday morning on communication skills? And that's the shift that our system needs. Equally, and this may sound completely contradictory to what I've just said, we also do need an ability to be able to, because we do provide such an opportunity in this country for so many, irrespective of ability, irrespective of where one has come from, for an education. So how do we evolve our method and our methodology of intelligence, our scoring system, our filtering system, to say, this is what you did well in it, to suit a society and a world which is rapidly changing, as you know, with the fast pace in which AI is now beginning to peak its head above the
and I think Debbie would agree with you, who has sent us a message to say how refreshing to hear Dr. Tej talking sense about Debbie. School. The head at my daughter's school had a parent assembly telling us all children are academic and they should be revising all weekend. There's too much put on them. You're only a kid for a short while. They need to get social skills too.
Debbie, let's open up a school. I completely agree with you, because we're living in this boxed sort of nature of measuring intelligence that is based on, you are clever because you got some exam results. No, look, the minute we start to personalize the journey from year 7 and start to teach pupils how to learn and start to focus on skill set development, the talent we have. And, I talk about this whole lost generation of geniuses, where how do you know that child in year 7 or year 8 or year 9 is not going to build the next unicorn, is not going to be that life-saving nurse, is not going to be that critical engineer that you need at that moment in time? You just don't, because he's not getting his science and his English and his maths immediately. It's like the set system in school. Right, I turned up to school the first day, I was in set 3. About 3 weeks later, I was in set 6, and set 6 wasn't good enough, then I was in set 8. I haven't come on here to rant about my school problems, but the whole system is geared towards the ones who naturally get it. And the ones who don't, what's left?
Yeah. Let's hear a voice note from the person who has been in touch, from Hev, who has been in touch for you, Tej. Let's play this voice note.
Good morning, Peter. Hev from Kent. Yes, talking to Evie there, very nice. She got good results and everything. Brilliant. Good on her. But there are lots of people that really do need help, and they need to be recognised for how they learn. I struggle terribly. I could really barely read when I left school. I understand how hard it is, so I think it would be more beneficial to talk to those people who really are struggling with learning, that nobody has recognised their form of learning and what they are actually good at, and focus on that. But I do think, for these programs, your program, and talk to somebody who actually does have an issue with learning and loathes school, because they don't feel that there's any hope going forwards.
Well, have great points there. And Tej, you talk to those people all the time. You work with them.
Day in, day out.
We spoke to Caroline Wheeler, the political editor of this Sunday Times. Her son had all sorts of problems. We hope to catch up with him. Again, it just didn't work out this weekend. But certainly there are people who you're really starting from scratch with, aren't you?
Totally, totally. And exactly as that message, which was such a profound message, and it sort of hit me in my core, because it is. We tend to forget, and we celebrate these results, and for every pupil who has won and has done well, my hat's off to you, to mums and dads who have committed around the country, fantastic. But there is, again, this sort of lost generation who sit there and go, I'm learning, and you compound that, because we're told you need skills to succeed, you need to get qualifications. But if you're that child in school who's sitting there, again, not to bring it back to myself, like me when I was in my 11 plus, like me when I was in my GCSEs, and in old money when I did my AS levels, the acute pressure and pain and stress that you feel every single day walking into school, going, this whole environment is not right for me. And you're constantly reminded of that pain point of not knowing how to learn. And the worst thing is you're rewarded by it. You're rewarded. You didn't get your exam result, you're going to drop a set. You cap your results at a low mark if you're doing foundational work. And you're almost treated in school terms like a second, third, fourth class citizen.
Yeah.
And that's then what creates that sort of animosity and that hatred towards not just school.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It's, we correlate. There's two metrics that we correlate. One is, can I deal with stress and pressure? Number two, do I feel school is a place that welcomes me and I feel safe and I feel happy? Whenever that gets worse, guess what happens to that?
Yeah, of course, the two
right?
come together.
And then we create this sort of political storm, an emotional storm of school's not right for me, which we need to change.
Tej, great to talk to you. You're an inspirational guy.
Bless
well
you.
done
so much
on all of your success and success with others as well. And the whole idea of success is something we're talking about. Maybe you want to get your call in on this, 0344 499 1000. We'll continue, of course, to talk about migration, but what Reem and Marley said earlier on. You can let us know your thoughts on all of that. And about Israel, one of their spokesmen will be with us in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. To respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your company here on Talk. There's an awful lot to talk about, whether you want to talk about education, as Dr. Tej Samani has been doing so, or you want to talk about migration. Keir Starmer says he's got a new plan to sort it out. He says that the appeals system for asylum seekers is going to be sped up. Maybe I need an education. And there's a lot that it can be done to solve the problems. We're also talking about Israel this hour. We've got a brand new book. It's out now from their spokesman to the UN. He'll be joining us live in the studio at 12:30. We'll be talking in a second to Karen McIver as well, who is the branch secretary of Reform UK in Epping. She has been involved in a lot to do with the Bell Hotel. We'll chat to her in studio in just a second. Lots more to come with your calls, texts and tweets as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. And as always, keep those voice notes to less than a minute, please. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock, and indeed tomorrow between 10 and 1. I'm sitting in for Julia Hartley-Brewer, so stay with us here on Talk. Quite a lot of people getting in touch on education and migration as well. Dan in Kent says, I went through life with stress and pressure, but I faced them with positivity and optimism. I'm sorry, Peter, but like most of my era, I see it as character building. Many moons ago in the 80s, I did an apprenticeship in plumbing and heating, and it served me well until my knees gave up. But for 4 years, I had understandably, I had a good job. Kids now, what about it from day one, having all of this change to education? Lots of people talking about that. Sally says, my partner did geography with geopolitics at uni. I say it's geopolitics with colouring in, says Sally. Harsh, but I think fair. Clone Dr. Taj and put him in every school in the land, says Debbie. And Neil says electricians and plumbers, etc. have to be academic to carry out their trade. I totally agree with you, Neil, and I do think it's a different form of intelligence. Definitely, it may not be looking at, calculus or trigonometry and working that out, or knowing all about King Lear. That's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We as a society really do need to change, I think, how we view education, how we view people who are successful. What is success? I gave a whole speech about it at my old school, actually, and I said, was success me going in good at English and coming out good at English, or was success me going in rubbish, dreadful at French, and coming out with an A at GCSE because I'd put the graft in and I had someone who was helping me an awful lot? Thanks as well to Tim, who says to Dr. Tej, do we industry think the curriculum is correct? Does it focus too much on the books and offer an adequate amount of vocational training? Well, Tej did talk about that a little bit earlier in the discussion, certainly. And Steve in Middlesbrough says, we took our son out, he is educated from home. The long and short of it is supply teachers letting kids vape in class, telling kids to go on their phones and don't tell anyone. The lad does martial arts, etc. He's very outgoing, so no issues with mixing with other kids. Just felt the education system is broken, just babysitting till the last year and then bombarded, says Steve in Middlesbrough. Lots of different thoughts on all of that. Quite a lot of thoughts on what Reem and indeed Marley were saying earlier on as well. Reem and Marley were on our debate desk. Let's hear a voice note from Nick, who has some thoughts on pensions.
Good morning, Peter. It's Nick from Who here. A great show as usual. Regarding the pensions discussion that you were having, a lot of people don't realise that the pension is now called a benefit instead of an entitlement. Is because we imported so many people into this country who didn't build up national insurance contributions that when they retired, they didn't have any entitlement to it. So they were running to the government for money. And so our dear government then decided to call it a benefit and pay it to anybody, regardless of what national insurance contributions they've already made. If we went back to the old system where you only got it if you paid into it, we wouldn't have this problem. Half the bill. Thanks, Peter. Good day to you.
Nick, thanks for your thoughts on that. Wise words. Barry's been in touch on what Reem said earlier as well.
So, Reem Ibrahim wants to reduce personal independence payments. Yeah, that's great if you can go out to work. What about people like me with a genuine life-shortening medical condition who can't? It would just impoverish me. That's really heartless and typical of people like Barry, Worcestershire.
Barry, thanks for your thoughts on that. I disagree with Reem, and I think that if people are entitled to PIP, they should get it. We need to look after disabled people in our society, or people who can't get to work for whatever reason, or people who just are entitled to it. And I think that, you know, PIP in particular is a very difficult benefit to get. And Barry, I have absolutely no problem as a taxpayer with you getting it. You clearly qualified for it, no issue from me. And nor do I think it should be reduced necessarily either. I do think the benefits bill does need to come down. I do think people who can work, unlike Barry, should be encouraged back to work in as much as they possibly can. But if you're genuinely disabled, no issue from me. Michael in Sunderland has been in touch, has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000 about migration. It's a big issue that an awful lot of people want to talk about. Michael's one of them. Michael, what would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for taking the call. Before going to the main subject, I went to the best University of Life. The lenses to be streetwise and have common sense, which I think some of our politicians don't have.
Yeah.
But anyway, about the immigrations, what I can't understand is they say they're coming over from countries that have been persecuted. Who's doing the background checks? Why did they ask them simple things? I've had to renew my passport, and the details I've had to give them is unbelievable. As well as sending me old passport away. So why don't they ask them about bank accounts, dental records, education details, family history, simple things?
Well, I think
if they haven't got them, put them in the detention centre in a tent that I previously heard, I think it was on your show. Ex-soldier says they lived in tents in Afghanistan.
Well, that was yesterday. That was yesterday. Really, really good call, actually, like yours, Michael, where he was talking about being in freezing temperatures in places like Kosovo, being in sweltering temperatures in places like Afghanistan, and they got on with it because they were serving their country, and that's what they had to do. Anne's been in touch as well. Stay with me, Michael. I'm just going to put a thought to you. Anne has been in touch and says, "Morning, Peter. Surely the easiest way to check the immigrant's identity is to access their phones after they've been here for a few days. I'm sure they contact their homes." I mean, that's not a bad idea at all, Michael.
No, well, so I'm getting back to common sense.
Yeah.
Our politicians, and to be truthful, I can go on and on, but like Stormer is not. We've got a leader who's set out a goal for him. He wants to be known big on the international stage.
Yeah, he certainly does.
In 5 years' time, he's going to be like Tony Blair. That's why he's sucking up to all of these EU members and everybody else, because he wants them to all think, oh, what a great bloke this is. We'll put him in charge of that.
And maybe they'll give him a big job as well, Michael, somewhere. Listen, I'm sure his motivations are as pure as the driven snow. Some may disagree with that. Michael in Sunderland, thanks for your call. Karen McIver is with me. I'm delighted to have you in the studio. Karen, she's the branch secretary of Epping Forest Reform UK. You have been at the forefront of a lot of what's been going on with the Bell Hotel. I just wonder, Karen, when you see all these protests that have happened right across the country in the last 24 hours or so. We know there have been 15 arrests, but the vast majority have been completely peaceful. What goes through your mind when you see so many people who are as angry as those in Epping are?
I think it's a really sad state that we've got ourselves into. I urge people to be peaceful. There are people out there that are going to try and provoke us. Okay, we are peaceful. We are British people. We do things properly. Peacefully protest. I think we can see the feel of the nation is very angry. We're having unvetted males putting out in our communities, and this is what we've got to focus on. We've got to focus on the people coming over on the boats who we don't know. The hotel in Epping. We we were peacefully protesting, and the location of that hotel is next to a secondary school. That was our number one concern. That's why we've been peacefully protesting. Now, across the country, hotels are popping up all over communities, and we can feel the anger. We can feel it. I urge everybody to be peaceful. We can make a difference, and just as your caller just said there, it's common sense. It's not rocket science. These people are breaking into our country. They're coming over on boats. We do not know who they are, and therein is the problem. It's not rocket science. Why should they then be rewarded with a hotel and 3 meals a day? I mean, it's just...
What do you think about what the government's legal argument is when they want to keep the Bell Hotel open? They're saying that it can't be closed. They want it to continue to be open, and they're also saying that were it to close, well, that would fuel violence in the country. That's what their legal argument has put forward.
I think it's a cop-out, and I don't agree with them. The Bell Hotel needs to close. It's a no-brainer. It's next to a secondary school. It's already been closed once because it's inappropriate. It shouldn't have been reopened in April, and it's a shame that it's taken to August for the injunction to go in. It should have been before that, but that's a story for another day. Right here, right now, they've got to accept defeat. They should not open that hotel. It will be wrong on every level. It's next to a secondary school. What do they not understand? It is so wrong.
Just tell us some of the... I mean, some people might say, look, if there are people in a hotel, they're beside a secondary school, you know, there may be people who don't have the experience that you and others have saying, what's the problem? Tell us what the problem is. Just spell it out.
Okay, so in the experience that we've had at Epping, the alleged assaults have taken place. Okay, we have to be careful with what we say.
Sure, of course.
So we know that things have gone on that shouldn't have gone on, okay? And that's just the stuff that we know about, okay? These people, who we don't know who they are, have been given freedom of our town, and you know, they're not working because they're not allowed to work. They're hanging around a school. They're hanging around at high streets. They're hanging around shops. We know that crime's gone up. We have to be very careful what we say because everything is alleged. But these are things that we know. So how on earth can the government reopen that hotel knowing all these criminal things have happened? It is just wrong on every level. The children are going back to school next week. You know, it's just, they need to get a grip. They've not got a grip. There's no plan. Reform have been very clear on what we would do. And you know, I urge the Prime Minister and I urge Yvette Cooper as parents to think about those parents, the children going to school next week. The children walk to school. Would they want their children to do it? No.
What they will say is there are 32,000 people who are in hotels. Where should they go?
And that's their fault because they've got no plan. They're not putting a deterrent for these people. There's decent people waiting to come to our country through the legal channels. What makes these people think they can pay a few £1,000s, come over on a boat, lose all their documents, don't know who they are, and queue jump all the wonderful people that are waiting to come to this country? It's wrong on every level, and they've got a huge problem. The Conservatives were just as bad. They've got a huge problem to sort out. They need to get a grip, and it needs to be sorted out urgently.
I mean, Labour would say that their plan to curb judges' powers, this is of overhauling the appeals system, that'll cut the backlog, that'll solve the problem. What do you think of that plan?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm just a regular mum, a community citizen, so I don't know the legality of all that, but I would say anything they're doing to shortcut and reopen that hotel after it's already, the writ has already gone in, it should not reopen, and I think it will be disgusting if they do reopen it, and I think that alone would probably cause more unrest in the country. This has been ordered, it needs to stay as it is, accept defeat, the Bell Hotel is going to close, and then look at the rest of the country and protect the people, ordinary British citizens around the country that are also suffering in communities. I hear some horror stories, and it's so scary. What's scary is there's no plan and there's no deterrent. Even today there's probably people coming over, tomorrow, yesterday. There's nothing stopping these people. They're laughing at us.
What has it been like for you, Karen? You've put your head above the parapet here. You've been at front and centre of one of the most controversial things that has happened in our country this year. What's it been like for you? Presumably online, you're getting all sorts of abuse, you're getting all sorts of people saying all sorts of things to you. Just tell us how it's been from your perspective.
Yeah, so the people that, the messages that come in online, I don't even read them. I don't read the negative stuff. I'm not interested. I'm there as a mum, a sister, you know, a wife, an auntie, now a grandmother. I'm there representing my community. I know who I am, and nothing anybody can say to me online is going to change who I am. I'm doing the right thing by my family, my community, and for the same reason as most other mothers that are protesting. You know, when women come together, women are the backbone of this country. When women come together and make a stand, it's a serious stand. We are concerned for our families. Our natural instinct as a mother is to protect our family, our children, and that's what all the mums around the country are doing. And I urge them to continue to do it, and please do it peacefully. Don't get in trouble for this. It's not worth it. And there are people out there that are going to try and antagonise us and bring us down. Just remember who we are. We are strong women. We're representing our community. We're law-abiding citizens, and we're doing the right thing by all of the people that are around us, the good people. And we want the boats to stop. We can't. We're a little tiny island. We can't keep having all these boat people coming over when we don't know who they are. And as I alluded to earlier, it's not fair on the people that are trying to come here, you know,
legally,
properly.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
And actually go through the system and play by the rules. Karen, good to talk to you. Thank you for coming into the studio as well. Karen McIver is Branch Secretary of Epping Forest Reform UK. Actually, sorry, just before you go, one more question. Nigel Farage says his big plan yesterday, I'm sure you read about it in the papers, he was talking about deporting people and saying that his plan is mass deportations, 5 flights a day. Do you think that plan's going to work?
I think it would be amazing, and the sooner it happens, the better.
Is he really going to be able to send people to Afghanistan, places like that?
Again, I don't know the legality of everything, but what I do know about Nigel Farage is when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And I think the British people need to get behind reform, get reform in government, and let this happen.
OK, Karen, thank you. As I say, Karen McIver, Branch Secretary of Epping Forest Reform UK. If you have thoughts on what she has said, let me know. 0344 499 1000. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes after the break. Stay with us here on Talk.
There is no way to control our border in the way that the British people have rightly asked for many, many times over many years, whilst we stay within the confines of the ECHR. The HRA is the UK Act that enshrines the ECHR into domestic legislation, so that's basically the same. You know, the same principle applies to that. And there are parts of the Refugee Convention that I think are essentially outdated.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Ian, who's been in touch. He simply says, new simple rule, Peter, arrive with no ID, no asylum. Thank you also to Tad, who says, when I was in hospital a while back, I entered into a conversation with a tea trolley pusher who was clearly an immigrant. He proceeded to tell me that he had made 2 British women pregnant twice so he could be sure to qualify for citizenship. Both women had 2 children by him, and he was and because he was poorly paid, they were paid for by the state. The system is absolutely crazy, says Tad. Thank you for that. I want to hear some voice notes. It's still reaction coming in to Marley, who was on earlier on. He was on with Reem Ibrahim. Plenty of reaction to her as well. Let's hear what John had to say about Marley.
Peter, John from Watford. Marley Morris, what planet is he on? They're having a hard time in a 4-star hotel. Is he kidding me? Is he kidding me?
I found that a bit weird as well when he said that. Martin's been in touch.
Good morning. On the subject of Starmer, I have to wonder, has there ever been a weaker or more inefficient person than Starmer? He fails at absolutely everything he does without fail. So I suppose at least he's reliably useless. It does make you wonder if there may be a case for reviewing all his law cases. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Martin. Let's hear from Steve on migration.
Good morning, Steve from Manchester. Listening to the show this morning, there's all this talk about appeals and 50% of them being successful. Right there is your problem. If you come in an irregular manner, an illegal manner, then you should not have the right to appeal at all. It's quite obvious that in the system, intrinsic to it, is a will to keep these people here. And, you're into the civil service and all the rest of it. Until it's 100% turnaround, there's no future for Britain. We may be witnessing and facing into the end of the British story.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. I think a lot of people will agree with a lot of the sentiments you have in there. There's a real sense of despair that a lot of people have. Michael's in Birmingham and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Michael, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, Peter. I just want to talk about the two guests who I think are getting a bit of a ragdolling you had at the start of the programme.
Yeah, Reem and Marley. Yeah, we had them on a little bit earlier on, yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm sick of people like them. They live in whatever bubble they live in, right? And, for them, multiculturalism, mass migration might be very good and very trendy around a Hampstead media dinner party. But when you're like me and you live amongst area where refugees have been settled and migrants have been settled, you can tell firsthand that it isn't quite as rosy in the garden as they make out. Like the self-segregation, the awarding of each other jobs, the not integrating at all with you and segregating themselves into their own communities. You say hello, you get glared back at, right? So let's just get that straight. They don't know. They live in Hampstead or Hillingdon or wherever. I don't know what trendy parts of London they live in, right? But the other thing that needs to happen is some colours have been right. Migration, asylum applications getting waved through. What Nigel needs to say is not only are we going to clamp down on new applications, we're going to review the last 20 years worth. And any that have been waved through without any substantive evidence, where they just said they were being persecuted, they're revoked.
I mean, that'll be a colossal task, Michael, but you think that's needed?
I do. And look, the words that need to be got out, I'm going to stand for reform. And the words in my campaign, which I'm going to ban, are don't, can't, won't.
Yeah.
If you've got that in your vocabulary, get out. Because if a law needs changing, change it. If a law needs ignoring, ignore it. What are they going to do? Sue Great Britain and put us all in prison?
So you Michael, you're actually going to stand for Reform UK. You're a member at the moment, are you? You want to stand as a councillor, an MP?
Yeah. A councillor. I met my local county councillor last week, and we had a really good chat. And I won't say who it is.
That's okay.
But we had a really good chat, and without blowing my own trumpet, she said you're quite articulate and you'd be an asset by the time.
Well, I think you're pretty articulate. I think you'd be an asset to any political party. I'm not advocating for any political party, Michael, but I think that having people like you in politics and in our political system would be a good thing. So I wish you well, Michael, and thanks for your call.
No, thank you, Peter. Take care, man.
Cheers.
Bye.
I also admire anybody from any political party, even political parties I completely disagree with, who stand for office. It's a really tough thing to put yourself front and centre, to stand up and to say what you believe in, and I admire people who do that. Yes, even people like Jeremy Corbyn who stand for Parliament, even though I completely disagree with basically everything he says. Mark in Lincolnshire has been in touch on 0344 499 1000. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi there, mate. Yeah, what it was actually about to do with what I'd heard on the back end of Jonathan's show before you today.
Okay,
Peter. When he was talking about Kemi Badenoch and how she doesn't see herself as Nigerian anymore. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a change. That's a change for Kemi, because she spent her time in office when they were in office last, doing everything she possibly could to benefit the people of Nigeria, and she was quite, she was quite open about that as well.
She said as well in the Sunday Times magazine today, she says there are racists who say I reached the top only because I'm black.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
no, well, I'm sure you wouldn't, because you're not a racist. But many people, that's what she said in this interview. She's spoken for the first time about the racism she's experienced as the Tory leader, claiming that some critics refuse to believe she could have succeeded through her abilities rather than positive discrimination. Do you think she's a woman of ability, Mark?
As a leader, no. I think she's pretty woeful, to be fair. I think, I get really quite tired of all this stuff with, people from minorities that always claim stuff like racism. Nobody ever really sees the evidence of the racism. I mean, sometimes you do, but I think a lot of it's perceived as well, because it's not only is it indoctrinated into us that we're awful people and we're racists and all the rest of it, it's also indoctrinated into them that they are going to be victims anyway.
If you tell someone you're a victim, you're going to feel like a victim.
100%, because if criticism can feel like racism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have the same thing, the Islamophobia stuff, all that, and that's what's really all that really happens with it, But we seem to be the only country in the world where any form of nationalism is, it's a dirty thing.
Do you think that's an English thing, though? Because there are a lot of people who, are really, really proud to be Welsh or Scottish, and it doesn't seem to be as big an issue.
Yeah, 100%. It is very much an English thing. I mean, it obviously comes through the institutions at the end of the day, the universities, all this kind of stuff, and it's filtered through for the last, 40 years at least. I just think that everything, I mean, Jonathan himself, who kind of pretty much angered me, when he will conflate things with, nationalism with ethno-nationalism and all this kind of stuff. Well, yeah, and the way I see it, Peter, I've spoken, I think, in the past about this. I want to see a country where obviously the majority is in England, the majority is English, white English. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with the fact that it's a majority white English country.
No, there's not. And that is about 85% of the country.
Yeah, and I also don't see why it's unreasonable for me to say, why do we have to have anybody else other than our own people in positions of power? That's not an ethno-nationalist position. That's just somebody who's worried about what's going on with what's happening in the country. The problem that exists, Peter, and I've seen this over and over again, and I can pull a load of examples of, if we had time to do so, because there's plenty out there, where you will find that people from minorities get into positions of power, exactly like Kemi did, exactly like Rishi Sunak did. And you see it with the Muslim MPs in Parliament now.
But Rishi Sunak is British, Mark. Rishi Sunak is British.
Yes, but he was, again, similar to Kemi, Peter. He would always go on about how proud he was of his Indian heritage.
Is he not right to be proud of his Indian? Is he not right to be proud of his Indian heritage and his Britishness?
Yes, he can be proud of his Indian heritage, but when that's also crossing over into, as he was doing, the same as Kemi was doing, where they're intentionally bringing in policies to benefit that country, then that's not necessarily in the best interest of Britain, is it? Or the best interest of...
He might have thought so, but listen, the debate goes on. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Leslie's been in touch and says, what would I tell my grandchildren on exams? Work hard, do your best, get the highest marks you can, then get out of this country as quickly as you can. Another person, Hev, says, good morning, Peter. What choice do we have but to have faith in Reform UK? Others can slate Nigel, but he has yet to have the chance to prove himself. And from where I'm looking, Reform is our only chance. If Nigel can't get returns agreements with countries of their own people, then we should just send them back to the last country they're in before becoming here. I begrudge paying them money to leave voluntarily. And Leslie in Bromley says, hi Peter, Labour, Starmer has spent his first year with his priorities totally wrong. Starmer's concerns have been cozying up to the EU and concerning himself with every other country's problems, whilst allowing our small island country to be destroyed by overpopulation, allowing more and more young fighting fit men to enter our country illegally, then make their demands and abuse Britain's generosity while the British people go without and get poorer and poorer. The sooner reform are in, the better Britain will be. Great show as always, Peter, says Leslie in Bromley. Thank you, Leslie. You can get your calls in 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk in just a second about Iran, about our relationship with them, and actually about a fascinating new book called Unveiled Inside Iran's Women, Life, Freedom Revolt. We've got the Israel's international spokesman to the United Nations, who's going to be in the studio in just a second. That's Jonathan Harunov. Let us know your thoughts on everything he says as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has contacted the programme. I just want to play a couple of voice notes. Lots on Reem and Marley before we go to Jonathan Harunov. Let's hear from Kitty.
Good morning, Peter. Kitty from Kent here. I think my head is going to explode with these two guests you've got on. They both sound like they come from either ridiculously liberal families or families of utter privilege, or both. They just don't get what is actually happening. These people coming in illegally don't want to integrate. They are taking jobs, and a lot of immigrants are taking jobs because they'll take a lot lower wages on an illegal basis than is legal in this country for British citizens to take, and we quite rightly will not work for that money. You need some older guests, because these people, they seem to just, I don't know. Just words fail me, and that is a rare thing. Anyway, have a lovely day.
Kitty, I think in both of our cases, words failing us isn't something that happens very often. Thank you so much for your message. Let's hear one from Glenn.
Peter, Glenn from Suffolk here. My God, how do you listen to these two wets? I'm sorry, Marley and Reem. I mean, my God, this country wasn't built with people like this that let us get trodden on and have people take advantage of us. We used to have a backbone in this country. And if we don't get this backbone back, we have had it. We have had it. The fabric of this country, its history, its culture is changing by the day, and it's got to stop.
Glenn, thank you for that. Thanks to Kitty as well. If you want to get your voice note in by the end of the programme, or give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Glenn was talking about the state of the country. I want to talk about the state of our country, especially in relation to two others, Iran and Israel. Jonathan Harunov is in the studio at the moment. Hello, Jonathan. How are you doing?
I'm great. Great to be with you, Peter.
Great to see you. Jonathan is Israel's international spokesman to the United Nations. He's also author of a new book called Unveiled Inside Iran's Woman, Life, Freedom Revolt. I've been having a look through it. I've read some of it. It's really, really good book. And Jonathan, you're an international award-winning journalist as well as a spokesman. I want to talk a little bit about Israel in a minute. I want to talk about Iran in general as well. I want to talk about Iran in regard to your book. First of all, I just perhaps can get your reaction to just the latest of what we're hearing from Iran, which is that they're going to stand strongly against the United States, wanting to make Tehran, as they put it, obedient. This is Ayatollah Khamenei said in comments carried by state media today. Those who threaten us to have direct negotiations with the US only see appearances, in my opinion, the issue is unsolvable. Of course, Israel attacked Iran recently, and the other way around. We clearly see that there is a major problem between Iran and the West that's not going to go away anytime soon.
It's not going to go away anytime soon, and I think this is really much a distraction by the clerical leadership, by the Islamic Republic. They don't want to deal with the very serious domestic challenges that the country is facing, the fact that there is quite a lot of unrest boiling up, the fact that there are water shortages enveloping much of the country, almost all of the 31 provinces, the fact that Iran's current president, Masoud Pezeshkian, warned that Tehran, a mega city of about 9 to 10 million people, could run out of water by September or October. These are all issues, and instead of dealing with these very serious issues that have been caused by decades of mismanagement, they're throwing accusations that Israel moved the clouds, and they're throwing all sorts of ridiculous assumptions, and they're trying to stoke conflict with the United States, with the West. And I think a lot of the Iranian people, who I've spoken to at least, see right through this hollow, transparent attempt of rallying the people around against an external enemy while really dealing with the problems on the ground.
You've talked a lot about Iran. You've spoken to a lot of Iranian people. You've written this book, Unveiled, Inside Iran's Women, Life, Freedom, Revolt. Why did you decide to write the book, Jonathan?
Precisely because if you're interested in the world, in foreign affairs, and you Google the word Iran or Islamic Republic, the most likely results that are going to come up are going to be about Iran's nuclear weapons program, its foreign policy, its dangerous and expensive foreign policy, its proxies. You won't read a lot about the 90+ million people inside Iran on the ground, who they are, what their aspirations are, how they feel about their government, how they feel about the West. And I very much, just as an interested observer, as a journalist and someone who cares a lot about peace in the Middle East, wanted to really shed light on the people behind the headlines inside Iran who have been on this 46-year quest for freedom against the Islamic Republic, and with a specific spotlight on the Women, Life, Freedom protest movement that took place 2022-2023.
Tell us how that started.
It started with the death of a young Iranian Kurdish 22-year-old woman named Mahsa Amini, who was stopped by the country's morality police in September 2022. She was beaten to a pulp, put into a coma, and died 3 days later on September the 16th, 2022. And her death really caused an eruption of protest inside Iran and abroad. And I think it was the culmination of really 40+ years of people just having enough, having had enough of a regime that cares more about subjugating its women, oppressing them, than really dealing with real issues on the ground.
And you're a man, you're writing about women, of course, you're talking to an awful lot of women. How was that a challenge in itself, or were you very able, I mean, I think you've achieved it very, very well in the book, to actually illustrate that and actually talk about all sorts of other things in the book, about culture, about music, about art, loads of different ways that are actually, that people are expressing themselves and resisting the tyrannical regime in Iran?
Writing a book, even writing an article about a topic like this, requires a lot of sensitivity, and much more so with the book. So it took 3 years or so to write. It took a lot of consultations with experts, people I trust, of course speaking with a lot of women, and especially as a man you have to give much more attention and sensitivities around everything you write, because it's an extremely delicate subject.
Speaking of extremely delicate subjects, you deal on a daily basis with Israel. You're Israel's international spokesperson to the United Nations. That is something that is has been for such a long time, but particularly since the 7th of October Hamas terrorist attacks, in the mind's eye of the international community. The main thing at the moment is, of course, the UN, the organisation you're the spokesman to. They are talking about famine in Gaza, or affiliated organisations to the UN talking about famine in Gaza. Mm-hmm. Is there a famine in Gaza?
I read the IPC's 59-page report that was released a few days ago, that has been circulating in a lot of the UK and international newspapers. To begin with, there's absolutely no doubt that there is suffering in Gaza. People are hungry, people are suffering, and they're suffering all over in Israel and Gaza. But what was an interesting experiment with this specific report was, and that was lauded by international observers, was I just did a very simple Control-F scan in this 20,000 word or so document, just to see if the word Hamas exists in this entire document, and it doesn't exist once. There's not a single mention of the word Hamas, as if this entire conflict that started out on October the 7th didn't exist. It's as if Israel just suddenly on October the 8th decided to launch some kind of assault on the people of Gaza for no reason whatsoever, and it's really appalling, the fact that there's no context at all, and the fact that the suffering by the people of Gaza and by Israelis, and no less by the hostages, who are also barely mentioned in this report, is a direct cause of the barbaric atrocities that were carried out on October the 7th. And
a direct result, you say? I mean, many would argue that actually it's Israeli bombardment of citizens, of infrastructure, of not distributing aid the way that they should have, that's actually at least as big a problem.
Well, the report talks about Israel having some kind of, it asserts that Israel has some kind of policy of starvation, but if you look at the alternative aid mechanisms that have been put in place for the past 22 months, it shows that Israel is actually trying to create a policy to prevent starvation. If you just put the UN aid deliveries to the side, the ones that have been looted ad nauseum by Hamas, look at the GHF aid distribution mechanism backed by the US.
It's the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That's the controversial one that the Americans and Israelis are working with together.
The one that has distributed over 135 million meals that the UN sort of refuses to work with. Look at all the airdrops, look at the maritime deliveries. There have been so many alternative methods of aid distribution to try and mitigate the issues on the ground, while Israel was trying to bring home the hostages. And if you think about the real kind of starvation, the actual policy of intentional starvation of on the ground, it's of the hostages. Just look at the emaciated young man, Evyatar David, who was forced to dig his own grave while being filmed, who was clearly starving. Yeah, look at Rom Broslavsky, who was also emaciated, begging for humanitarian aid. There's no aid distribution mechanism inside Gaza to deliver aid to hostages. Absolutely nothing. And there, of course, wouldn't be, and there's no expectation of Hamas, a internationally renowned terrorist organisation, to create some kind of aid mechanism. But instead, the IPC report, UN agencies, UN officials are focusing maniacally on demonising the country that has been in this defensive war for 22 months.
Do you feel it is entirely defensive? It is not an offensive war. It's entirely as a result of the 7th of October. They're not going, because many people say, look, they were with Israel for a long time. The Israel, in many people's view, has gone beyond what is rational and proportionate.
I think
and there's a lot of opposition within Israel to Netanyahu, isn't there?
Well, Israel's a thriving democracy, so it welcomes and it has, as you can see on television, protests that take place on a regular basis. I highly doubt that any kind of protest like that would take place anywhere else. Gaza, you see what happens when there are any instances of uprising by the people.
And we've seen Hamas executing aid workers.
Executing aid workers. You wouldn't see protests anywhere else, but there are. Israel's a democracy. It has people who disagree how the war should be conducted, but I think there's a very broad consensus over the fact that the hostages have to come home and that Hamas cannot continue to exist. And if those two objectives are met, then there's no reason why this war should continue to go on.
I want to bring it back to this country a little bit, because anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli sentiment, which are not too far away from one another, are things that have just been here to a huge degree. There's an awful lot of pro-Palestinian protests, and that's fine as long as it's not anti-Semitic, but a lot of it is. We've also seen Britain's wheelchair basketball team condemned for turning away from the podium in Cologne during the Israeli national anthem. We've seen a lot of that, haven't we? We've seen a lot of that, and we also see, I wonder what you think about Palestine Action as well.
Well, the wheelchair sports event that you mentioned, it was deeply upsetting and offensive to see, especially while the song Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, was being sung. It's a song that is all about hope, future building, it's positive messages, and the fact that this kind of snub took place in a completely apolitical event only leads to the further demonisation of these kinds of athletes, which is why this team had to have very intense security around them, and it's not the sort of culture that you would want to foster around a completely apolitical event.
Yeah, and here in the UK as well, I just wonder, there are many people who say that people who support things like Palestine Action, for example, are actually, they're more worried about free speech. I just wonder what you think about that, about people being arrested for simply holding a card saying, I support Palestine Action.
I mean, I think it would depend on the specific instance, and I'm not sure of the specific instance you're referring to, but I would suspect that some of these people who are saying that they're just holding placards also just happen to be condoning certain terrorist organisations.
Palestine Action is a proscribed terrorist organisation.
And the same way you've seen certain renowned authors also claim to be supporting certain just innocently supporting terrorist organisations. This is not a peaceful kind of protest.
Well, that's the organisation Sally Rooney, who will be said that she's going to donate her royalties from the BBC to Palestine Action. It's a shame. She's a good author, but I'll never ever read her again. One author I will be reading is Jonathan Harunoff, who has written this great book. It's called Unveiled Inside Iran's Women, Life, Freedom, Revolt. Jonathan, good luck with the book. We'll talk again, no doubt. That's Jonathan Harunoff, who, as well as being the author of Unveiled, is Israel's international spokesman to the United Nations. We'll get more of your thoughts on all of this. You want to respond to anything that Jonathan said, you give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
What Ricky chose is standing in a crowd of people at a protest saying those protesters over there need to have their throats cut and get every single one of them.
And he also said it in front of a camera.
Yes, in front of a camera. He's an elected official.
Much larger,
absolutely. And he was released on bail, eventually had the expert advice of a very experienced criminal lawyer, a KC, whereas Lucy only had a duty solicitor and was very badly advised.
Yeah.
And then once Lucy was sentenced, in the sentencing remarks, the judge referenced diversity and inclusion. So there wasn't just a legal assessment of her tweet, there was a political one, in my opinion.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Ashley, who says, "Hi Peter, I'm so glad you said about migrants and food. I work 70 hours a week and struggle to feed my kids and clothe them, yet these people get everything for free. It is wrong," says Ashley. Brad says, "Peter, many people like me aren't interested in these schemes. They simply want illegal immigration stopped and a temporary pause on all migration until this country's infrastructure is sorted out," says Brad in Cambridge. Dean in Ealing says, "I love Reem Abraham, but the bit she is missing is this. When working will suppress wages and then the taxpayer picks up the bill yet again because they can't live and we have to pay in-work benefits." Anne says, "Surely anyone that arrives in this country illegally by large boat or in the back of a lorry should be instantly excluded from seeking asylum. No appeals, just sent back. That way they surely would not come here." Mark says, "Great show, but please stop blaming Labour for the immigration issue. The Tories were in power for the last 14 years. And where's your condemnation of how they left the immigration system or any public body? It's easy to blame Labour, but they can't fix everything on day one or within a year." Okay, Mark, yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I'll take that on the chin. I suppose the question is, when do we start blaming Labour when things go wrong? Because, yes, it might be like turning a ship, but are there the ways they propose to do that correct? I'm not sure they are. Tim says, best change to the system would be to prevent them from getting in originally. Says Tim. Lisa says, so the reason we voted for Brexit was to be rid of the low-skilled migrants. Reem would like to encourage it. Strange ideology. Andy in Woolwich says, your two guests, especially Reem earlier on, completely missed the point. I hire people, and she is saying I'm going to recruit people I know nothing about. It's ridiculous. The main point most are protesting about is nothing to do with race. It's to do with culture. We do not wish to see our country change to a Sharia state with its prehistoric values. Multiracial, absolutely 100%. Multicultural, absolutely. Not respect... multiracial, absolutely 100%. Multicultural, absolutely not. says Andy, respect the country that you live in. Great show. And one more before we go to a call. Dell is in Wales. Please tell Reem that some people on personal independence payment only get £29 a week, even with universal credit on top. That is less than the minimum wage. Well, let's talk to Diane in Coventry about migration. Diane, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for taking my call. With regards to your guests, when they were stating about the people coming over and taking jobs in, say, the NHS or carers or things like that, there's quite a few, even illegal and illegal, that have got false qualifications, has been found out, some of the cases. And with regards to the ones that throw their phones into the sea, where are they getting their numbers from when they get the new phone?
Well, it's a very good point, and I think a lot of people would ask that question. I think there are a lot of questions to ask. Someone mentioned earlier on and said, actually, hold on a second, maybe what we could do is ask these people, 3 or 4 days in, or maybe a week in, if you've got a new phone, who are you ringing? Where are those people? Where are you actually from?
Well, those numbers could be traced to which country they're actually calling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you ever so much. And I just hope that things improve in the future for sure.
OK, well, listen, thanks very much for your thoughts, Diane. Let's go to Herbie in Harrow. He's also given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Then we'll get some voice notes. Herbie, what would you like to say?
Yes, hello, Peter. You were saying earlier on this morning about what Nigel was saying about we're on the edge. We've been on the edge for years. What are they talking about? We're in a crisis like we've never, ever known before. And the thing is, it wasn't the Labour as well. It was the Conservatives that started it, and Labour have carried on with it. Peter, we are heading for disaster, and it's not going to be easy to resolve it. Nobody seems to have an answer to the problem. Nobody has an issue with the problem. Nobody really knows.
Starmer might say he has a bit of an answer because he wants to reform the appeal system for people who are claiming asylum. Do you think that might help in some way, Herbie?
Well, we've got to do something, Peter. We can't let it go on indefinitely. We've got to try something. Rwanda didn't work, so what else have they got to do? If Nigel says they're going to send people back, then so be it. We've got to do something. We can't let it carry on indefinitely. We're heading for the biggest crisis this country's ever faced.
Herbie, thanks for your thoughts there. I have some breaking news now on Talk, and that is that a 54-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life after a restaurant fire in North London on Friday. 3 people were taken to hospital in a life-threatening condition after the fire at the Indian Aroma in Ilford, that's in Essex. 2 remained in a critical condition on Sunday morning, according to the Metropolitan Police. The restaurant has suffered extensive damage in the blaze, and that is the breaking news that a 54-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life at a restaurant fire in Ilford in Essex on Friday. Let's get some voice notes, including from James on migrants.
Hi Peter, James Tower Hamlets. Having grew up and lived in the East End all my life, I got quite an insight into the criminal way of thinking. Like the woman just said, they're laughing at us. They are. When people get away with something once and nothing happens, and they're criminally minded, they will hammer it. They will do it. And I'm not talking about the people smugglers, as the Labour like us to talk about. I'm talking about these people getting on this boat. Their first impression of hitting English shores is they've got away with it. Nothing's happened, they've got away with it, and they're getting rewarded for it. Now, what does that tell anyone with any criminal inkling to do? I think it's quite obvious, what we're importing. It's terrible. And as for the appeals processor, once they've been told no, let them appeal from another country or their country and let them pay for it.
James, thanks for your thoughts there. Alison in South Wales has been in touch on text as well on WhatsApp. She says, which country should we go to for asylum? We're being invaded by people who wanted to do us harm. Our free speech is in a dire situation. Our police are against us. Our government don't care for us. Our children are in danger. Where should we go? Sarah in Morden says, we haven't even seen the true cost of Labour's horrendous budget yet. Imagine how many new applications for benefits there will be next month when all the students who've left college and university can't find a job and their student support report has ended. Anne in Kent says that Conservative you had on earlier, Matt Vickers, explains exactly why the Conservatives are finished. The arrogance and superiority of the man is exactly why we'll never vote for them again. Listen to your former supporters, treated the public with disdain over the last 14 years. Thank goodness for Nigel Farage. Thanks to Elisa in Chelmsford as well, who is reacting to what Jonathan Harunoff has said. She says the IPC that compiled the famine report changed the threshold of what famine is to suit their narrative. One of the authors is a well-known anti-Israel activist. Let's actually hear, I should say, on voice notes from Gary about, I think this is going to be an interesting one from Gary.
Oh, hi, Peter. It's Gary here from Belfast. I mean, I'm 50 now, but I did medicine at Queen's, and in the Faculty of Medicine, in the sort of second and third year, most of the dentists were kicked off the course because they were brilliant academically, but they couldn't wire a plug. You know, there's just no sense to it. No sense to it at all. Brilliant academically, but no manual dexterity.
I think you probably need a bit of manual dexterity when you're a dentist. That would be a good thing. But getting them to think less academically and more practically might well be like pulling teeth. Gary, thank you for that. John has been in touch.
Peter, John from Watford again. I called in yesterday. I think a few people need to get their heads screwed on right. I've been at work for 2 years now. I've been sending out 1,200 CVs. I've got a degree. I've got 40 years of experience. And yet I couldn't get a job. I've just got a job now, but it took a lot of effort to get that. And I was being turned down and turned down and turned down. So why do these people who think they come over on boats, why do they think they're going to get work straight away? It's only going to be low economic people who are going to be coming over. If they are a doctor or anything useful to us, they'll become in the normal legal routes. So anybody who comes on a boat illegally, they're illegal, deport them. I don't care. And never come back again.
Let's hear a final voice note from Kevin.
Morning, Peter. Kevin in Sheffield. You had a caller on earlier, another Kevin. I totally disagree with everything he had to say, but the one thing that did come across that hit the nail on the head is when Reform win the next election, they are going to face such a challenge to get any of their policies in place, because we've got far left ideology in basically all parts of society. It's in his armed forces, it's in civil service, it's in anything you can name, and it seems to be ideology over actually doing the right thing. I really hope Nigel Farage and Reform can somehow overcome it, but boy, is it going to be hard to do after nearly 30 years of indoctrination. Great show, Peter. Carry on the good work.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate that. And thank you to John. And John, I'm so sorry to hear you're having such a tough time getting a job. I hope there's a glimmer of light. I hope something happens for you soon. 1,200 CVs. You're very determined anyway, and I hope there's someone out there who'll give you a job. You're clearly someone who wants to work, and that is something that we